Windshield started to crack, but Ing didn't care at all. Activate second mode. Jiang Lushi shouted fiercely. In an instant, the base vehicle began to grow taller and wider. The engine's high-pitched roar turned deep and thunderous. The base vehicle's second form, activated. A 160-ton mining truck charged forward like a steel dinosaur in the dark. The roads in the Villa district were completely crushed. Flower beds were flattened into soil by tires weighing 2 to 3 tons. This steel dinosaur charged directly toward Villa number 6. Rat-a-tat. Rifle bullets poured down again, but the mining truck's front was already reinforced with level 1 armor plating. These bullets hitting the thick steel might as well be mosquito bites. At that moment, Ran Shiyu suddenly sensed an intense threat. 9 o'clock direction, right side, ambush. Any ambush specifically called out by Ran Shiyu was no ordinary one. Jiang Zhuiying had already made her move at the first moment. Electricity is fast, far faster than bullets. And Jiang Lushi didn't even have time to turn and pull the trigger. Compared to him, Jiang Zhuiying, who could attack instantly in a full 360-degree range, was Shuring's squad's fastest attacker. ZZZZT. A dazzling blue lightning bolt pierced the night. A figure squatting beside a flower bed, holding an RPG launcher, convulsed violently as lightning struck. The launcher rolled to the ground. It all happened too fast. From Jiang Lushi's charge to reaching Villa number SIXS gate, not even 20 seconds had passed. The station troops had no time to react further. By now, the mining truck was too close to the villa. They couldn't use heavy weapons without hitting their own side. Chu Zhongshan reacted quickly. He got up and dressed. But then, boom! A loud crash. The villa's front gate was smashed and sent flying. The flying gate spun through the air and slammed into the second floor of the villa. A large section of glass shattered instantly. Who? Zhang Tianyu? Chu Zhongshan was both shocked and angry. The first person he thought of was Zhang Tianyu. The two were almost openly hostile. This time, Zhang Tianyu's expedition to the worm nest would likely cost him heavily. Could he have left a backup plan, and decided to take Chu down with him? Chu Zhongshan didn't think Zhang would have the guts, so who else could it be? Just as Chu opened the basement's iron door, he saw rubble all over the floor, broken furniture, and cracked walls. An ability user rolled in and shouted, "Commander, don't go out." Chu Zhongshan was tackled back onto the bed, his head spinning, furious. Who the hell is it? A truck. A huge truck crashed into the villa. Half of the villa is collapsed. A truck? How could a large truck break into the military commission residential area? And even if it was a big truck, it still shouldn't be able to crash and collapse half of a villa. Chu Zhongshan was filled with anger. He shoved away the ability user bodyguard who had pushed him down and strode toward the basement door. But when he opened the basement door again and walked to the basement window, he was stunned. Under the faint moonlight, he finally saw what the giant truck, described by his guards, really was. A super truck, nearly as tall and wide as a 3-story villa. It had rammed straight into the villa, causing half the house to collapse, as if it had been hit by a 99-style tank's main gun. At the same time, he saw electric flashes in the truck's cab. Guards charging forward with guns were instantly paralyzed by electricity and collapsed on the spot. Jiang Lushi. That name flashed sharply through Chu Zhongshan's mind. The one with lightning powers was Jiang Zhuiying, and as for that mining truck, it had been described before by an officer who witnessed his son being killed. Jiang Lushi came back to Zhonghai? Chu Zhongshan was completely shocked. This man had actually come alone to the Zhonghai Military Commission District? Chu Zhongshan felt a chill down his spine. Instantly, he retreated back into the basement. And at the very next moment, crash! Glass shattered in a room on the first floor of the villa. Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuiying leapt into the room. Ing remained in the mining truck to provide support. Ran Shiyu was in the truck handling reconnaissance. All the information was transmitted directly into Jiang Lushi's mind. In the hallway outside the room, 2 people are approaching. Ran Shiyu's voice echoed in Jiang Lushi's mind. He instantly raised the AMR sniper rifle in his hands. Jiang Lushi used the sniper rifle like a handgun. In close combat, he didn't need the scope at all. Bang! The door was kicked open, and at the same time, the AMR sniper rifle in Jiang Lushi's hands burst out a dazzling fire snake. A fierce man had just rushed in, holding a steel shield, but the bullet pierced straight through the special shield and knocked the man flying. Just as the man flew backward, a ghost-like shadow appeared in the room. This person had dark skin and seemed to blend into the darkness. He held a long knife and slashed toward Jiang Lushi's neck. This shadowy figure was the same shadow man who always stayed by Chu Zhongshan's side. He was Chu Zhongshan's personal guard, never leaving his side. His mission was to protect Chu Zhongshan. Among all of Chu Zhongshan's subordinates, he was the strongest. The long knife was silent as it struck fiercely toward Jiang Lushur. But just then, a stark white flash of lightning lit up. The blinding light made it impossible to keep one's eyes open, as if a bolt of lightning had slashed across in front of them. The shadow man immediately leapt back, and his figure emerged from the shadows. He was dressed all in black, as if he were one with the darkness. His exposed skin and face had an eerie paleness, like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in years. The moment he was exposed, his figure flickered and vanished back into the shadows. He was an assassin in the dark, who had performed many shady missions for Chu Zhongshan. Still trying to hide? Jiang Zhuiying sneered coldly and stabbed her long blade into the ground. Electric net. Zzzt. Terrifying electricity instantly surrounded her and Jiang Lushur and quickly radiated outward. After her strength upgrade, Jiang Zhuiying's electricity could now extend over 10 meters. In the confined space of the villa, this range equaled total coverage. At the same time, Jiang Lushur activated his brain domain, slowing his vision. Found him. The shadow man moved quickly in the dark, but no matter how fast, the electric current caused stiffness in his movements. The fact that he wasn't electrocuted to death right away meant his physical strength was exceptional. At the moment of stiffness, Jiang Lushur had already locked onto him. Bang! Even an ability user who survived the electricity couldn't withstand a sniper bullet. Shot at close range, the shadow man flew backward, his body nearly torn in half at the waist. Under the joint attack of Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuiying, the shadow man had no power to resist. He had no chance of killing Jiang Lushur at all. There are a few more people ahead. Ran Shiyu continued. Inside her mental domain, all their positions were known to Jiang Lushur. They couldn't stop him at all. Chu Zhongshan, are you going to keep hiding like a turtle, waiting to die? Jiang Lushur was already rapidly approaching the basement. The basement security door was thick and heavy. Chu Zhongshan hid inside, his expression ugly. He was a dignified military commissioner, residing in the core of Zhonghai Safe Zone, under heavy protection, yet a mere survivor squad had broken in. And only 2 people had entered, and they had advanced all the way like a knife through butter. Chu Zhongshan looked at the ability users still by his side. The shadow man had already been sent out. These ability users had thought Jiang Lushur's group would be handled easily. That shadow man was their strongest. But unexpectedly, he had been killed right after meeting Jiang Lushur. This survivor squad was terrifyingly powerful. Go stop him. Chu Zhongshan ordered. His facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. If he were protected by the military right now, no matter how capable Jiang Lushur was, he wouldn't be able to stir up any trouble. But Jiang Lushur had come straight to his doorstep. With Ran Shiyu scanning and Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuiying's coordination, the remaining few ability users only managed to delay them for a few seconds. Bang bang bang. After a few scattered gunshots, the entire villa fell silent. Chu Zhongshan listened to the noise outside. His radio only emitted static. Top, top, top. In the darkness, crisp footsteps slowly approached the basement door. Hearing the sound, Chu Zhongshan felt like his heartbeat was following that rhythm, thumping along in sync with the steps. This high-ranking official in the Zhonghai Safe Zone felt his palms beginning to sweat. No matter how many storms he had weathered, never before had he been so close to death. And the one who had pushed him to this point was just a survivor. Chu Zhongshan sat in his office chair, watching as the lock was shot open. Then, the door was kicked open. The figure whose footsteps had sounded like a death knell stood before Chu Zhongshan. Chu Zhongshan, we meet again. Chu Zhongshan sat in the chair, staring fixedly at Jiang Lushur, who had walked in. His face was as pale as ash. He really hadn't expected that, as a high-ranking military commissioner of the Zhonghai Safe Zone, he would be hunted down in his own home by a survivor. A dozen guards couldn't even handle 2 people. Jiang Lushur, both in courage and skill, was truly terrifying. In all his decades of power, Chu Zhongshan had never seen anyone as daring and outrageous as Jiang Lushur. But Chu Zhongshan, worthy of being a figure holding great authority, was still able to suppress his anger and fear at such a moment. He calmly said, "It seems I underestimated you. You're very bold, sneaking into my house like this. Now that I've fallen into your hands, I have nothing to say. But do you really think you can walk out alive after assassinating a military commissioner inside the Zhonghai Safe Zone?" Chu Zhongshan said. He guessed Jiang Lushur had sneaked in disguised as a survivor squad, but getting in was one thing, getting out was another. The gunfire here had probably already attracted the security forces. Just then, Ran Shiyu's voice rang in Jiang Lushur's mind, "Brother Jiang, a lot of people are approaching." Jiang Lushur glanced at Chu Zhongshan. Chu had completely calmed down by now. "If you kill me, you and your team will be buried with me. Why don't we negotiate a deal instead?" Hearing Chu Zhongshan speak so casually about negotiating, Jiang Lushur smiled. He pulled over a chair and sat down in front of Chu Zhongshan, staring at him and said, "Oh? Planning to buy your own life? As long as you..." Bang! Before Chu Zhongshan could finish speaking, Jiang Lushur suddenly jumped up and kicked him hard. With a miserable scream, Chu Zhongshan and the office chair crashed heavily to the floor. That one kick made Chu Zhongshan dizzy, and the abdomen that took the blow felt like it had been hit head-on by a truck. Chu Zhongshan was already nearly 60. If he hadn't abused his power to drink water infused with evolution crystals, that kick from Jiang Lushur might have cost him his life. Even so, the pain was terrible. Chu struggled to get up, coughed several times, then vomited a mouthful of sour water. "You've come after me again and again. This time, you even tried to kill me with a timed bomb. Your life, even if you gave up everything you own, still wouldn't be enough. I want your life." Jiang Lushur walked up to Chu Zhongshan and said coldly. Chu saw Jiang's foot stop in front of him. While coughing, he raised his head, but as soon as he did, Jiang Lushur grabbed his collar and lifted him up. Seeing Chu Zhongshan's pale face, Jiang Lushur said with no expression, "Commissioner Chu, you look pathetic." Chu's eyes widened, "You little, ah." Before he could finish swearing, he took a heavy punch in the mouth. The skin at the corner of his mouth split, his vision spun, and his mouth was full of blood. The rest of the insults were swallowed back down. Jiang Lushur looked at him coldly and with disgust, "Try being foul-mouthed again." Seeing the look in Jiang Lushur's eyes, Chu Zhongshan couldn't help but tremble deep down. His identity and status meant nothing to Jiang Lushur, not even a fart. By this time, Jiang Zhuiying had opened and searched all the cabinets in the basement. 1 evolution crystal, 5 level 1 mutant crystal nuclei, some mutant beast meat, a pistol, and quite a few bullets. All of it was stuffed into a bag by Jiang Zhuiying. Seeing this, Chu Zhongshan's heart ached as if twisted. Those evolution crystals and mutant cores, though not many, had taken him a long time to collect. Even though he had great power in the military, his constant power struggles consumed a lot. These were all his personal stash. "You're so damn poor," Jiang Zhuiying said, rolling her eyes at Chu Zhongshan. Hearing this, Chu Zhongshan nearly coughed up blood. "Brother Jiang," Ran Shiyu's voice came again. "They're here," Jiang Lushur replied. In the night, more than a dozen military vehicles and many jogging security troops quickly rushed to the villa district of the Zhonghai safe zone. They rapidly surrounded Chu Zhongshan's villa. The loud explosion and gunfire had come from here. But now, the villa was pitch black and silent inside. 2 military commissioners living nearby also rushed over. "Stop," one of the commissioners ordered the troops to halt 100 meters away. "How is Commissioner Chu?" they asked. "He's inside. The exact situation is unknown," a security team captain answered, standing at attention. One of the commissioners frowned at the captain and shouted angrily, "How could something like this happen? What are you all doing?" The captain felt bitter. He had no idea what had actually happened. At the first sign of trouble, he'd already questioned the gate guards, but none of them could explain it clearly. All they knew was that a vehicle had come in. But where was the vehicle? Just then, with a bang, a huge black shadow burst out of the villa. The commissioner no longer had time to scold the captain. That loud noise drew everyone's attention. Buzz! The huge shadow came to a stop. Everyone's eyes locked onto it. This was a minibus? This vehicle looks familiar. Isn't that Jiang Lushur's van? Many in the military had heard about Jiang Lushur's minibus, some had even seen it. Just a minibus wouldn't be distinctive. There were too many. But the flying saucer-shaped operations module on its roof, that couldn't be faked. So it's him. The commissioner's face changed. He knew that Jiang Lushur had killed Chu Zhongshan's son, and Chu had sent patrol units to cause Jiang trouble. The conflict between them ran deep. But wasn't Jiang Lushur escorting scientists to Star City base? How could he be here? Seeing the villa smashed open was even more unbelievable. How did he do that? And at that moment, in the operations room, the image of Chu Zhongshan appeared. He was tied up, with his face pressed to the firing port of the combat room. In full view, Chu Zhongshan's miserable appearance was seen not only by the 2 commissioners, but by many soldiers as well. Chu Zhongshan even recognized one of the commissioners, someone who had competed with him for power. At that moment, Jiang Lushur's voice rang out. "Chu Zhongshan sent people to kill me. My target is him, and only him. Let us leave." Jiang Lushur's voice was heard, but he couldn't be seen. They could only see Chu Zhongshan. "What do we do? Commissioner Chu is in their hands." The security team captain didn't know what to do. In this situation, they couldn't just force their way in. He was Chu Zhongshan's subordinate. If something happened to Chu, whether because of his position or duty, he'd be in serious trouble. But more important than that was saving Chu Zhongshan. Without Chu, the captain would lose his backing. Would he still be allowed to keep such an important post? Shearing squad, Jiang Lushi. What are you trying to do? Let go of Commissioner Chu at once, before you make a big mistake, the captain shouted. In the dark, Jiang Lushi's cold laughter was very clear. Let him go? That would be suicide. Acting like this is digging your own grave, the captain shouted back. He looked toward the two military commissioners beside him. One of them also said, Jiang Lushi, you're playing with fire. Let go of Commissioner Chu before it's too late. Jiang Lushi was unmoved. Chu Zhongshan was in his hands. Even though he was surrounded by gun barrels, they couldn't do anything to him. He had thought this through before sneaking into the Zhonghai safe zone, crossing hundreds of miles to assassinate Chu Zhongshan. How to get away afterward was part of the plan. I went through the corpse tide during such dangerous times, on a mission to Star City base. I was escorting 3 scientists. But Chu Zhongshan sent people to assassinate me, he even used a timed bomb. Jiang Lushi shouted loudly, if not for that, why would I take such a huge risk to come back halfway? Everything happening today is what Chu Zhongshan brought on himself. Hearing Jiang Lushi's words, Chu Zhongshan's eyes widened. What Jiang said implied that he, for the sake of personal revenge, had targeted the 3 scientists too. Sure enough, the moment Jiang finished speaking, Chu Zhongshan felt that the looks people were giving him had completely changed. He tried to open his mouth to say something, but after just being punched, he couldn't even speak clearly. And when Jiang Lushi mentioned the scientists, the 2 military commissioners exchanged a glance, a heavy look in both their eyes. 3 scientists had been traveling with Jiang Lushi, and now that Jiang was back in the Zhonghai safe zone, where were those scientists? The military had lost contact with Xu Chongqing. They had no idea what was going on. To the military, the 3 scientists were extremely valuable assets. With them in Jiang Lushi's hands, no one dared act rashly against him. Chu Zhongshan felt his heart sink. This Jiang Lushi was completely fearless. Just then, an off-road vehicle drove up. No one present failed to recognize the military plate number on that vehicle. This was the car of Chairman Fang of the Zhonghai Safe Zone Military Commission. After hearing the commotion, Chairman Fang had already made his way over, and along the way, someone had informed him of the situation over the radio. The car door opened, and Chairman Fang stepped out with a dark face. At a glance, he saw the minibus, and Chu Zhongshan's face, pressed awkwardly against the combat room's window. Chairman Fang was very clear about Chu Zhongshan's character and shady behavior. He didn't even need to ask to guess what Chu had done. He looked at the minibus, inwardly astonished. Such guts. Crossing the corpse tide, returning to Zhonghai, just to kill someone. Chairman Fang knew a lot about Jiang Lushi. The order to have Jiang escort the scientists had come with General Zhang's strong recommendation, and Chairman Fang himself had signed off on it. As for Jiang Lushi and Shearing Squad, Chairman Fang had always admired them. As chairman of the military commission, he deeply disliked these power struggles, but as someone in the thick of it, he had no choice but to deal with the web of relationships. He had turned a blind eye to Chu Zhongshan's prior actions against General Zhang and his embezzlement, but this time, Chu had brought this on himself. Drive. Jiang Lushi suddenly gave the order. As soon as he spoke, stomped the accelerator. Buzz. The still minibus suddenly roared like a supercar. It swerved sharply and charged directly toward the exit of the complex, right in the direction where the military commission chairman, 2 commissioners, and the security team captain were standing. Seeing the blinding headlights of the minibus charging toward them, the captain was shocked. Too crazy. Quick! Stop them, he shouted. But how could you stop a full-speed minibus? They could shoot or fire heavy weapons, but Chu Zhongshan's head was stuck in the combat room's window. Let them go! Chairman Fang shouted. There are still 3 scientists in his hands. As Chairman Fang spoke, the minibus had already reached them. One of the commissioners waved his hand, and all the troops they'd brought stepped aside, clearing the road for the minibus. Buzz. As the minibus sped past them, the security captain was completely stunned. A survivor squad had infiltrated the core of the Zhonghai safe zone, captured a high-ranking official, and was now swaggering out while surrounded. Looking at the minibus racing toward the gate, Chairman Fang's expression was extremely complex. Worrying about the scientists was one reason. The other, Chu Zhongshan was dangerous, and maybe he shouldn't be kept alive. Everyone present knew clearly, now that they had let Jiang Lushi go, they would never see Commissioner Chu again. As the minibus neared the community gate, Chu Zhongshan's face turned ashen. He had been abandoned. He had always schemed against others, but never expected that, in the end, he'd lose his life because of that. At the crucial moment, Chairman Fang had done nothing, and the other commissioner hadn't spoken a word from start to finish. They were happy to see him die. Chu Zhongshan felt all his strength drain away. He had dominated his whole life, yet now, like a criminal paraded through the streets, he had lost all dignity, walking toward death under the eyes of those hoping he'd die. Long life? Supreme power? The ability to decide others' lives and deaths, none of it mattered anymore. Don't start reflecting on your life just yet. Stand firm. We still need you as our pass to get out of the Zhonghai safe zone. Jiang Liusher's voice came from behind. Chu Zhongshan trembled, and with a bleck, spat out another mouthful of blood. What he regretted most in life was not killing Jiang Liusher at all costs when he had the chance. Jiang Liusher had destroyed everything. The minibus roared all the way as it rushed out of the Zhonghai safe zone. From crashing into Chu Zhongshan's villa to breaking out of the neighborhood, Jiang Liusher had used only a short amount of time. When those people hesitated just now, he immediately gave the order to charge out, not giving them much time to react. And after leaving the neighborhood, Ran Shiyu instantly expanded her mental domain to the maximum. Large groups are approaching from the 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock directions. Ran Shiyu's voice continuously rang in Jiang Liusher's mind. Those who had just arrived were the closest ones, generals, commissioners, and their guards who lived in nearby villas. These people were not entirely united with Chu Zhongshan. But Chu had built his own forces for years, and he still had his security team and patrol squads. Once the others arrived, the minibus might get stuck in a trap. So Jiang Liusher's strategy was simple: speed. From the moment they received the news to when they could come to intercept, Jiang Liusher seized that gap and broke out before they could form an encirclement. Who goes there? The guards at the main gate had just seen the vehicle when they suddenly felt dizzy and disoriented. By the time they regained their senses, the minibus had already passed through the gate and left Zhonghai Zone 1. They had infiltrated quietly, and retreated completely. This night was destined to shock many people. In just a few minutes, the power structure of the Zhonghai safe zone would face a complete reshuffling. After leaving the Zhonghai safe zone, the minibus drove a bit farther, then stopped on a street. At this moment, the street looked deserted. The glass doors of shops on both sides were shattered, with dried bloodstains, bones, and scattered debris everywhere. However, almost no zombies could be seen on the street. The minibus suddenly stopped here, and Chu Zhongshan stared at the street ahead, his face like death. Get out! The door opened, and Chu Zhongshan was dragged out of the vehicle by Jiang Liusher. If you're going to kill or cut me, just get it over with, Chu said coldly. He was afraid of death, but in front of Jiang Liusher, he refused to bow his head. You tried to kill me with a time bomb, kill my sister, kill my teammates, and now you think you can die quickly and easily? It's not that simple, Jiang Liusher said. Chu's hands were tied. Jiang Liusher only gave him a cold glance, then turned and went back into the minibus. What are you doing? Chu was stunned. When he saw the minibus door close, and Jiang Liusher behind it, Chu suddenly had a terrifying feeling. At that moment, a sharp car horn suddenly blared. That sound on this dead street was exceptionally piercing. After the sound rang out, there was a second or two of silence. Then Chu Zhongshan heard a sound. Growl. It was a low, beast-like growl that instinctively made Chu feel a chill. He slowly turned his head, and from the corner of the street, several zombies suddenly charged out. These zombies were filthy and covered in blood. Their faces still looked vaguely human, but with blood-red eyes, twisted and vicious expressions, and terrifyingly fast and frenzied movements, it sent chills down the spine. When they saw Chu Zhongshan, the desire in their eyes was chilling. Seeing these zombies rushing toward him, Chu's fear finally exploded. He frantically ran toward the minibus, pressing his terrified face against the door and staring at Jiang Liusher behind it. Kill me. Just kill me. No, no. Suddenly, he was yanked away from the door, and blood splashed across the glass. Let's go, Jiang Liusher said, withdrawing his gaze. Yi County. Zhu Changqing, waiting here, was filled with unease. He knew Jiang Liusher had gone back to Zhonghai to settle the score with Chu Zhongshan, but Zhonghai safe zone was guarded by the military, and Chu lived in the core area. Jiang's return was like hitting a rock with an egg. But besides waiting, Zhu Changqing had no other option. He was still a long way from Star City base, and without Jiang and his squad, Zhu didn't dare proceed. Some veteran soldiers had begun to complain. They couldn't leave, and they didn't know what had happened to Jiang's team. They felt Jiang was too impulsive, not thinking of the big picture. Professor Qin and her daughter weren't saying much. The two professors looked worried after hearing the situation. Zhu Changqing checked the radio every day, keeping an ear on Zhonghai safe zone updates. He feared he'd hear news that Jiang's squad had been captured or killed. Through the radio, he also heard updates about the worm nest. He knew his superior, General Zhang, had personally led troops to eliminate it. Zhu had been with General Zhang for a long time. With the general's age, going to such a dangerous place, Chu Zhongshan had surely laid traps for him. After hearing this, Zhu hoped Jiang could kill Chu Zhongshan. But he also knew that would be nearly impossible. He only hoped that, if Jiang saw no chance of success, he would retreat. Today's report: in the battle to resist the corpse tide in Zhonghai safe zone, Military Commission member General Chu Zhongshan has heroically sacrificed himself. The radio sounded again. Zhu didn't even hear the rest. Once he heard, heroically sacrificed, he shot to his feet. Holy shit! A few veterans working on vehicle repairs nearby were startled by his sudden reaction. What happened, Captain? Someone looked at the radio and asked quickly, did something happen? Zhu stared at the radio, dazed for 2 seconds before yelling, it's Jiang Lushi. Everyone present instantly felt their hearts sink. So it really was related to Jiang's team. What happened? One soldier asked nervously. Zhu slapped his leg. He killed Chu Zhongshan. These veterans, who had been looking grim, were all stunned at first. But then, their faces showed utter shock. Jiang Lushi, Shering Squad, killed Chu Zhongshan. They knew exactly who Chu Zhongshan was. How did Jiang manage it? Holy shit. I don't even know what to say, Zhu muttered. He had imagined every worst-case outcome, except this one, that Jiang would succeed. If the radio's reporting it like this, they obviously won't pursue Jiang anymore. He'll probably be back soon. When he gets back to Yi County, I'm going to ask him everything. As for Chu Zhongshan, he deserved to die. Chu Zhongshan's death and the chain reaction it might cause were no longer within Jiang Liushi's concerns. That was naturally something for General Zhang and the others to resolve. He was sitting in the minibus, which was heading back the way they came. From Chu Zhongshan's basement, Jiang Lushi had retrieved an evolution crystal. After some discussion, it was decided to give it to Jiang Zhuiying. Her electric discharge ability, being an energy-type ability, was very hard to evolve and improve. Jiang Zhuiying was often in battle, eating a lot of mutant beast meat every day, but there had been no significant improvement. Jiang Lushi felt that mutant beast meat alone wasn't much help for her evolution. The energy she absorbed from the meat was only enough to cover her daily consumption. But the energy crystal extracted from a large amount of mutant beast meat could provide Jiang Zhuiying with enough energy. Unfortunately, only one was found at Chu Zhongshan's place. It was foreseeable that in the future, evolution crystals would become a hard currency, just like mutant crystal nuclei. Jiang Lushi was already eager to activate the energy extraction chamber. But he still hadn't had the chance to obtain the level 2 mutant crystal nuclei required to activate it. At this moment, Jiang Zhuiying had already consumed the evolution crystal. Do you feel anything? Jiang Lushi asked. Li Yusin looked at Jiang Zhuiying, then said, the energy in the evolution crystal needs to be absorbed slowly, it's a process. As she spoke, she smiled slightly. You're too anxious. Jiang Lushi rubbed his nose and said, as for the mutant crystal nuclei, I'll keep them for my own use. But I'll take out an equivalent amount of mutant beast meat and divide it equally among you. Now, everyone in the vehicle excepting needed to evolve. So, the more mutant beast meat, the better. No one objected to Jiang Liushi's arrangement. Speed up, Jiang Lushi said. Nodded, and the minibus immediately roared like a beast, speeding down the road. Yi County was not far ahead. Wait, something's wrong up ahead, Ran Qiyu suddenly said. Then her spiritual field fully expanded, stretching out to its 2-kilometer limit. Ran Qiyu's face instantly turned pale. What's wrong? Jiang Lushi asked. There's a corpse tide heading toward Yi County. Ran Qiyu said. Jiang Lushi stood up abruptly. How big is it? Yi County had walls, but lacked enough weapons and ammunition. Most people there were ordinary citizens. A normal zombie group might be held off, but a corpse tide? And Yi County was home to scientists, his aunt, and sister Han. Not very large. Jiang Lushi had just breathed a sigh of relief when Ran Qiyu added, but there's a very powerful light source. I don't know if it's a mutant zombie or a mutant beast. The corpse tide is moving around it. At once, Jiang Liushi's expression changed again. If it was a mutant zombie, then a corpse tide led by one would be like a primitive, savage army. The Shering Squad had seen the power of such corpse tides before. Yi County's defense couldn't possibly withstand it. Even if the town didn't fall, many people would die. Hurry and catch up. Jiang Lushi said urgently. The already speeding minibus roared even louder, racing ahead. The dark, densely packed zombie horde soon entered their field of vision. There are people ahead, Ran Qiyu suddenly said. She sensed several light sources ahead of the zombie group, representing human beings. People? Jiang Lushi immediately looked over. At the front of the horde, 2 vehicles were speeding madly. Both were modified off-road vehicles, belching thick black smoke from their exhaust pipes as they raced forward. From the sunroof of one of the vehicles, a figure climbed out, holding a gun and glancing back at the horde. Seeing the mass of zombies made his scalp tingle. He fired 2 shots, but to the zombie tide, they were like a tickle. He saw one zombie at the front fall, but it was like a drop of water in a flood, instantly swallowed. A shout came from inside the car, "Li Jun, stop wasting bullets. We only have so many, each shot counts." "Damn it, I know." Li Jun shouted back. This group of survivors looked at the zombie horde behind them, their hearts sinking. They had gone out to gather food, and things had been going smoothly, until this zombie group suddenly appeared. They had already lost one vehicle and several teammates. With only these 2 cars left, running was their only option. Yi County is just ahead. They now hoped to use the environment of Yi County to shake off the zombies. Li Jun, being a local of Jiangbei, knew something about Yi County. He'd even dealt with Boss Sun before. The walls and fortress that Boss Sun built had always made Li Jun envious. With Yi County's walls, maybe they could block the zombie horde. Just then, the survivor sticking out from the sunroof suddenly exclaimed, "Huh?" Past the zombie horde, he saw a vehicle, a minibus? A minibus chasing after the zombie tide? Li Jun blinked, thinking he might be seeing things. The vehicle was very fast, and soon reached the rear of the horde. Are they trying to die? Li Jun was stunned. The vehicle didn't swerve to avoid the horde, instead, it rushed toward it? Too bad. If that dumbass vehicle had been in front of them, it could have drawn away some of the zombies. But it's just one minibus, it won't last one wave of the zombies. Go, go, go! Li Jun said, preparing to climb back into the car. Just then, he saw the minibus suddenly accelerate, and charge directly into the zombie horde. What the hell, are they insane? Li Jun's eyes widened. Boom boom boom. Like bowling pins, the minibus plowed into the zombie horde, sending over a dozen zombies flying. Within the horde, the minibus pushed forward like a sharp wedge. Zombies that jumped onto the minibus were knocked away instantly. Li Jun was stunned. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had thought the vehicle would crumble like tofu at the first impact, but unexpectedly, it was ferocious. Inside the zombie horde, the minibus cut through like a blade. Meanwhile, in the operations cabin, Jiang Lushur also saw the 2 vehicles ahead, and a gunman sticking out of a sunroof. But he only glanced at the survivor group, then turned his gaze toward the zombie horde. The powerful light source Ran Shiyu mentioned was hidden within the zombie horde. These zombie hordes were probably brought here by those survivors, Jiang Zhuiying said. And judging by the direction they were fleeing, it was toward Yi County. Probably because they knew that Yi County was a survivor gathering area. I know, Jiang Lushur said. As for those survivors, he didn't have the time to pay attention to them right now. Whoosh! A dark shadow suddenly leapt out from the zombie horde, pouncing toward Jiang Lushur. Jiang Lushur immediately activated his brain domain ability, everything in his field of vision slowed down. Bang! As a long flame burst out, the zombie that had just leapt out to ambush him was shot in the head. Li Jun saw the combat cabin on the roof. Before he could even express his surprise, he saw that burst of flame and the zombie's head being blasted apart. Damn! A sniper rifle. Li Jun stared, his eyes burning with envy. He only had a Type 95 assault rifle in his hands, with not much ammo left, he was reluctant to use it. Their team originally had another rifle, but it was destroyed with the previous vehicle. Li Jun was originally a college student. He only learned to shoot after the apocalypse. He didn't know much about military matters. You see that? A sniper rifle. If I had that sniper rifle, I'd directly shoot that monster among the zombies to death. Li Jun looked at the sniper rifle with envy, fantasizing how much his combat ability would increase if he had it. Bang! 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 Every shot from the sniper rifle killed a zombie. Very quickly, the minibus had already forcefully charged into the center of the zombie horde. On the highway, these hundreds of running zombies were like a black flood, and the minibus seemed to be submerged in that flood. But not only did it not sink, it kept charging forward. Roar! At that moment, a loud roar suddenly erupted from the zombie horde. The sound of that roar made people's bodies tremble. Jiang Lushur also felt a chill in his heart when he heard it. Then he saw a group of zombies get pushed aside as a mutant beast charged out. This mutant beast was about the size of a small car. Its blood-red eyes radiated cruelty and rage. The fur on its body stood up like steel needles. It was a mutant bear. There shouldn't be bears around Jiangbei. This mutant bear probably escaped from a zoo after the apocalypse. Compared to its original size, it had grown at least 5 times larger. The pressure it gave off was extremely terrifying. As soon as the mutant bear appeared, it charged straight toward the minibus. The sound of this bear running was like a herd of elephants charging. That mutant beast has appeared. Not just Li Jun, now every member of that survivor team was watching the suddenly appeared minibus. As soon as the mutant beast appeared, it had smashed one of their vehicles, with people inside, into a metal pancake. That scene had scared Lee Jun and the others out of their wits. Usually, when they saw a mutant beast, they would try to hunt it. But this one's attack power was terrifying. There were power differences between mutant beasts too. This one was definitely among the strongest. Now that it was enraged and charging at the minibus, everyone thought the minibus was done for. Boom boom boom. The mutant bear charged at the minibus with terrifying speed. Jiang Lushur aimed at the mutant bear and pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet howled through the air. The mutant bear turned its head slightly while running and was hit in the shoulder. The terrifying sniper bullet tore through a large chunk of its flesh. Blood stained its fur red, and the mutant bear let out a furious roar. Danger sense. Jiang Lushur frowned. Mutant beasts and mutant zombies, just like human ability users, were also highly sensitive to danger. Many creatures in nature originally had this ability, and after the apocalypse, that sensitivity was amplified. This mutant bear had dodged a headshot from the sniper rifle because of its danger sense. And after being hit, its huge body only paused for a moment before charging even more furiously. Roar! It suddenly stood up on its hind legs, and everyone in the minibus, including Li Yusen, felt the light in front of them get completely blocked. Oh my god, Li Yusen widened her eyes in shock. This bear. She had seen very few mutant beasts before. This was the first one she'd encountered at such close range. And the face-to-face pressure was terrifying. Even Jiang Lushur was stunned for a moment. When this mutant bear stood up, its body looked even bigger, taller than the minibus itself. Its ferocious bear head looked straight at Jiang Lushur in the combat cabin. The survivors watching were even more horrified. When the bear attacked them before, it hadn't stood up, and that was already terrifying. Now, when it stood up, they realized this was its true combat form. The mutant bear swung its huge paw and slammed toward the combat cabin. Its exposed claws were like sharp blades. Boom! The mutant bear's paw slammed hard into the combat cabin. Li Jun suddenly felt a chill down his back. That strike was brutal. The gunner inside must have been turned into paste. The sniper rifle was probably destroyed too. But just then, bright electric currents suddenly lit up across the massive body of the mutant bear. The currents looked like silver snakes slithering along its body. The mutant bear's body stiffened. The smell of scorched fur followed. Then, boom! A loud explosion rang out. The mutant bear's broad back suddenly puffed up like a balloon, then, flesh and blood splattered. The massive body of the mutant bear was flung away and crashed into a group of zombies. What just happened? A bomb? Li Jun was stunned. Then he was even more shocked to see that the top of the minibus, the UFO-like structure, was completely unharmed. At that moment, the mutant bear was still roaring. It had taken a direct hit from the air cannon, and was still alive. Jiang Lushur quickly extended the gun barrel from inside the combat cabin, aimed at the mutant bear struggling to get up, and pulled the trigger hard. Bang! With the sound of a gunshot, the mutant bear's wide-open mouth exploded. Its body swayed, then fell heavily to the ground. Boom! As the massive body hit the ground, all the survivors felt the earth tremble slightly. By now, the minibus had already reached the side of the mutant bear. The surrounding zombies were closing in, as if about to swallow both the minibus and the bear. Send it straight to the storage space, Jiang Lushur said, using automatic absorption to collect the mutant bear's body. Recently, with more people in the team, mutant beast meat had become scarce. This bear was a lucky catch along the way. At this point, his eyes turned to the two survivor vehicles up ahead. These survivors were completely stunned. They had been desperately running for their lives from the zombie horde and the mutant bear, but that minibus had taken the initiative to attack, to provoke, and in the end, it actually won. Boom! The minibus accelerated and burst out of the zombie horde. Ho ho ho! The zombies chased after the minibus crazily. Seeing those zombies, as if stimulated, speed up, the survivors were first stunned, then felt their scalps go numb as the horde rapidly approached. Damn! Why is that minibus coming toward us? A survivor cursed loudly. The minibus, bringing a mighty zombie horde behind it, was heading straight toward them. These survivors had hoped to use Yi County to help them escape the zombies and the mutant beast, and Jiang Lushur's group, their destination was also Yi County. The two survivors' vehicles immediately floored the gas pedals, accelerating like mad, but they could only watch helplessly as the minibus got closer and closer from behind, eventually overtaking them. Wait! Wait! The survivors shouted loudly. Human psychology is strange. If someone is behind you while escaping, you stay calm. But once overtaken and left behind, panic sets in. Their combat strength was inferior to the minibus's, and their defense too. The minibus wasn't afraid of zombies, but they certainly were. Even stepping on the gas, they couldn't keep up with it. After a few minutes of mad running, the zombie horde was finally left behind. Only then did the survivors breathe a sigh of relief. Li Jun looked at the minibus ahead and suddenly thought, are they going to Yi County? This direction could only be to Yi County. If heading to Jiangbei, they'd have taken another road, no need for this detour. If they're going to Yi County, we could go together, Li Jun said excitedly. Actually, Yi County wasn't far anymore, so going the same way wasn't that important. But this survivor team and their minibus were too strong. Li Jun wanted to get close to them. Wait! Wait! Li Jun reached out to the steering wheel and slammed the horn repeatedly. Wait! At the same time, Li Jun shouted non-stop. At this point, the minibus finally came to a stop. Constant honking, so annoying. What do they want? Jiang Zhuiying said impatiently. Their main goal was to deal with trouble, not to save survivors. These people were just lucky to tag along. Getting that benefit was already lucky, why keep chasing? That honking was ear-piercing, and might even attract the zombies they just got rid of. Seeing the minibus stop, Li Jun got excited and urged the driver to speed up and catch up. Before the vehicle had fully stopped, Li Jun had already jumped out. What do you want? Looking for a fight? Jiang Zhuiying rolled down the window a crack, frowned, and asked coldly. As she spoke, a small silver electric current flashed in her eyes. After taking the evolution crystal, Jiang Zhuiying was about to break through to level 2 ability user. Her temperament had changed a lot. When she showed killing intent, even just being near her made people's skin sting and hair stand up. Li Jun felt that exact sensation. He immediately remembered the electric net that had covered the whole mutant bear. If used on a person, it could instantly cook them alive. So fierce, Li Jun was startled. At first glance, he'd thought she was stunning, but he hadn't expected such a fiery temper. Don't misunderstand, beauty. I definitely didn't mean anything bad. Li Jun quickly smiled and said cautiously, we just wanted to thank you. Thank? Who honks to say thank you? Jiang Zhuiying rolled her eyes. Oh, I see. Goodbye. Just as she was about to close the window, Li Jun hurriedly said, one more thing. May I ask, are you heading to Yi County? Jiang Zhuiying was even more annoyed. Where they were going had nothing to do with these people. The thing is, Li Jun said, we're also going to Yi County. I'm quite familiar with the place, I could lead the way, make some introductions. This minibus, he'd never heard of it before, probably not a local survivor team. If such a powerful team existed in the area, he would have known. After Jiang Lusher repainted the minibus, he also removed the license plate. So Li Jun looked at the minibus and guessed the team didn't operate in Jiangbei. Seeing Jiang Zhuiying still looking completely disinterested, Li Jun was a little speechless. These survivors really had their noses in the air. Just because they had some strength, they acted all arrogant. Miss, Yi County isn't simple. A kingdom was established there, they built walls and even a palace. I know the emperor, Li Jun said. At that, Jiang Zhuiying couldn't help but laugh. Seeing how confident and proud he looked, she couldn't help but ask, oh? You're close with him? Of course. Li Jun patted his chest. In truth, he wasn't close with Boss Sun at all, just knew him. But now was the perfect time to show off, so a little exaggeration seemed fine. Just then, another window opened, revealing a figure. He was holding a sniper rifle with a cold metallic gleam, wearing a casual black hoodie, looking relaxed. As soon as this person appeared, Li Jun first noticed the sniper rifle, then looked at his face. That sniper, so cool. He was actually using a sniper rifle. But as soon as he saw the man's face clearly, Li Jun froze. How could it be him? Jiang Lusher was a bit speechless. Jiang Zhuiying had a mischievous streak, she liked to mess with people who were bluffing. To Jiang Lusher, there was no point talking with these survivors. He opened the window, just wanting to say a few words to send the guy away, but when he saw the man's face clearly, he froze for a moment. This person looked a little familiar? At that moment, Li Jun's eyes widened. He pointed at Jiang Lusher in disbelief and said, aren't you Jiang Lusher? Jiang Lusher, post-apocalypse, looked almost the same as before. His hair was trimmed, his face clean, clothes tidy and new, and he was sitting in a safe vehicle. Even Li Jun felt for a moment like the apocalypse was just a dream. Seeing a familiar person, unchanged from before, it really made you question reality. Jiang Lusher was stunned again. He really knew him? He thought for a moment and asked, you are? Jiang Lusher's reaction made Li Jun's expression freeze for a moment. He actually forgot about him? Or was he pretending not to recognize him? But soon, Li Jun realized. Jiang Lusher hadn't changed much, but he himself had changed a lot. After the apocalypse, Li Jun had gone through a really hard time, like a rat hiding in garbage heaps, eating rotten food just to barely survive. He had a large scar on his face, caused by a mutant beast. He had almost lost one eye. Plus, he was now filthy and smelled of not bathing for a long time. It was normal that someone from the past couldn't recognize him. "You're doing pretty well," Li Jun thought sourly. At this moment, Jiang Zhuiying, next to him, asked, "Brother, you know him?" "Brother?" This powerful and beautiful girl was Jiang Liusher's sister? Li Jun was even more shocked. A person like Jiang Zhuiying, in a survivor team, would definitely be one of the top members. If Jiang Liusher was her brother, how could he be weak? By now, Li Jun had looked through the car window's gap and saw the inside of the vehicle. It was a luxury RV. On the table inside were food and drinks. He also saw the silhouettes of 3 other women. One of them, was that Li Yusin? Li Jun figured Li Yusin probably didn't remember him, because back then he had tried to get to know this famous beauty, but she was very proud and didn't pay him any attention. But now, she was in the same vehicle as Jiang Liusher? This luxury RV had strong defense and housed several beauties, with only one man, Jiang Liusher. Li Jun's eyes were practically bulging. He knew that after the apocalypse, some powerful people, like Boss Sun in Yi County, lived luxurious lives with many women, acting like tyrants. Li Jun deeply envied those people, but he was just an ordinary survivor struggling at the bottom. He couldn't even dream of that kind of life. Yet now, he saw an old acquaintance living it. At that moment, Jiang Liusher finally recognized Li Jun. "You're Li Jun?" Jiang Liusher asked. Li Jun quickly nodded. Yes, that's right." He felt envy, jealousy, and resentment toward Jiang Liusher. But Jiang Liusher was far above him now, so he didn't dare act carelessly. He knew that after the apocalypse, many people had changed either from what they experienced, or because their dark sides were released. Who knew if a former nobody had now become arrogant just because he gained power? In Li Jun's eyes, Jiang Liusher had gotten himself an RV, gathered several beauties, especially even Li Yusin, probably a classic example of someone who got power and became cocky, maybe even mentally twisted. "Oh," Jiang Liusher responded calmly. Before the apocalypse, when he was modifying the base vehicle, he had asked Li Jun to repay money, but Li Jun hung up on him. That meant nothing to Jiang Liusher now, but he wouldn't be warm to someone like this. "I was really a jerk back then. I'm sorry, brother Jiang. I hope you'll give me a chance to make it up to you," Li Jun said proactively. Jiang Liusher looked at him and asked, "Make it up? I don't need anything now. What can you offer? Aren't you heading to Yi County? I know the Emperor of Yi County, I can introduce you." "Otherwise, he doesn't let just any survivor enter," Li Jun said. Jiang Liusher showed a faint amused smile. At this moment, Jiang Zhuiying asked, "The Emperor you're talking about, his surname is Sun, right?" Li Jun was stunned. "They knew?" Then Jiang Liusher added, "He's already dead." "Dead?" Li Jun's first reaction was disbelief, but when he looked at Jiang Liusher, was he the one who killed him? Li Jun only knew Boss Sun was strong, he had walls that could block zombies, and Jiang Liusher, with just a minibus, killed him? But looking at Jiang Liusher's expression, it didn't seem like a bluff. "Actually, I wasn't that close with him," Li Jun said awkwardly. Then he looked at the girls inside the vehicle and suddenly said, "Brother Jiang, I'm good with guns. Keep me, I can do chores, the dirty and hard work, and also shoot." Besides Jiang Zhuiying, the other girls probably were just pretty faces, only good for warming the bed. He, an old classmate, was offering to work like a slave. Jiang Liusher would likely accept, just for the sense of superiority. Li Jun looked at the vehicle interior, even just drinking the leftover soup from Jiang Liusher would be better than his current life. The other survivors also gathered around. "We'll drive behind you, and never disturb your life," Li Jun said. "You're shooting?" Jiang Liusher smiled and shook his head. Just then, Ing rolled down the driver's side window and extended an 81-style rifle. Bang! A road sign in the distance shattered instantly. Then, she moved the barrel, fired again. A zombie crawling out from the grass had its head blown open. The survivors immediately shut their mouths, and Li Jun was dumbfounded. So powerful. This kind of marksmanship was way beyond theirs. "We're not vases, nor arrogant fools," Ran Shiyu's voice suddenly echoed in Li Jun's mind. Li Jun was startled. That was what he was thinking. A psychic ability user. What kind of team was this? "Don't come to Yi County," Jiang Liusher said. Li Jun's whole body turned cold. He felt like the biggest chance of his life had just slipped away. The walls of Yi County soon came into view. Zhu Changqing and others looked out from the wall every day. The broadcast had never mentioned Jiang Liusher's group. At first, Zhu Changqing was shocked when he heard the news. But later, when word spread through the squad, some soldiers said gloomily, that message didn't mention Captain Jiang, maybe because it would cause too much trouble. But judging by the safety zone's security, after killing Chu Zhongshan, Captain Jiang probably couldn't have made it out alive. That possibility wasn't impossible. But all that worry disappeared the moment the minibus appeared on the road. That familiar minibus sped forward and quickly reached the city gate. Zhu Changqing was overjoyed and shouted, "Open the gate." When the minibus drove in and Jiang Lushi and the others got out, the soldiers were filled with disbelief. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes and heard it with their own ears, they wouldn't have believed it really happened. These soldiers only respected those with real ability. Although Jiang Lushi had shown strength before, he hadn't yet truly shocked them. As soldiers from the Zhonghai safe zone, they had strong confidence in the area's defenses. A military commissioner was someone with great authority, someone they would be nervous meeting. But that kind of powerful person, that level of defense, had been broken through and killed by Jiang Lushi, who returned completely unharmed. They couldn't help but admire that. "Captain Jiang, you're finally back." Zhu Changqing breathed a sigh of relief. His gaze toward Jiang Lushi had changed. Mindless rage is called recklessness. But Jiang Lushi's successful return was decisiveness and ruthlessness. In the apocalypse, someone like him was definitely not to be provoked. "Get ready. Some zombies may be approaching," Jiang Lushi said. After killing that mutant bear, even if some zombies reached Yi County, it wouldn't be a problem anymore. When Jiang Lushi arrived at the palace, the place had already changed. On the square, many survivors were gathered. Under the guidance of two soldiers and Zhang Hai, Sun Quan, and the others, they were learning how to use guns and how to fight. After Boss Sun and his followers were eliminated, the security force of Yi County was affected, but the city walls were still intact. With this many people, as long as they worked together, they could continue surviving. Yi County was still a grain depot. The large amount of supplies hoarded by Boss Sun, along with the preserved farmland, could all serve as survival resources. "Sure too, we heard you need diesel. There's some in Boss Sun's warehouse, go ahead and take it." Su-Han hurried over as soon as she heard Jiang Lushi's group had returned. Diesel? Jiang Lushi did need it. Every time he used the mining truck form, it consumed a huge amount of diesel. But the survivors in Yi County also needed diesel to generate electricity. In the end, Jiang Lushi only took enough to fill his fuel tank. "We'll soon head to Xingqing Bay City. Hanjie, you and Andy should come with me," Jiang Lushi said. Xingqing Bay City was similar to Zhonghai Safety Zone, large in scale, with stationed military, and relatively safer. Su-Han showed a bit of hesitation and said apologetically, "I've already discussed this with Mom. We've always lived in Yi County. Back when Boss Sun oppressed us, it was the neighbors helping each other that got us through. Now that he's dead, we want to stay and contribute what we can. And besides, we're familiar with everyone here. In Xingqing, we wouldn't know anyone, it wouldn't feel the same," Su-Han added. In truth, both Su-Han and her mother knew Jiang Lushi was powerful, even more so than Boss Sunday. But they were ordinary people. If they followed Jiang Lushi, there wouldn't be much they could help with. "Hanyi. That's enough, sure too. No need to say more. We'll take care of ourselves. You're so capable, you'll surely come back to Yi County one day, so it's fine," Su-Han interrupted. Seeing how determined she was, Jiang Lushi had no choice but to give up on taking them with him. On the square, the survivors of Yi County indeed seemed renewed. Without Boss Sun, they were freed from suppression and were actively trying to survive. "The three professors are also teaching us how to grow rice, with higher yield per mu. It's completely enough to support our lives," Su-Han said gratefully. Jiang Lushi knew Professor Qin was a botanist, but he didn't expect the other two professors to also specialize in agriculture. It was a bit surprising. When they reach Xingqing Bay City, they should achieve something significant, Jiang Lushi said. In the apocalypse, food and resources were the most important. No wonder when Jiang Lushi mentioned the scientists, the soldiers in Zhonghai Safety Zone didn't dare act recklessly. Jiang Lushi stayed in Yi County for a few more days, then the convoy set off again toward Xingqing Bay City. Xingqing was a major central city along the middle reaches of the Yangtze River and one of the largest industrial and commercial cities in south-central China. Before the apocalypse, Jiang Lushi had never visited Xingqing, though he had always been interested in some of its historic sites. Unfortunately, this time, he was visiting a city already ravaged by the apocalypse. As the convoy entered the Xingqing area, what came into their view were abandoned buildings on both sides, overturned and burned-out vehicles on the streets, and the air filled with a putrid smell. "Every city we pass through looks like this. It's like hell," Liu Yusen said with emotion. "Well, it's global. That's why it's called the apocalypse," Jiang Lushi replied. He had watched movies before where a city was infected with zombies and the virus spread globally. Back then, he thought it was impossible, that it underestimated the power of nations. But when the virus outbreak happened simultaneously worldwide, it was like a tsunami, no power could stop it. Xingqing Base City is in the northern part of Xingqing. From here, it'll take us about a day to get there. Let's press on as much as we can today and then find a place to rest. Zhu Changqing's voice came through the walkie-talkie. Moving through the city slowed things down, so spending a whole day on it was already an optimistic estimate. No problem, Jiang Lushur had no objections. But not long after, Zhu Changqing's voice came again. Captain Jiang, there's a military unit ahead. Military? Weren't they still far from Xingqing Base City? How come they encountered the army so soon? Jiang Lushur went up to the combat cabin to check the situation. After long-term consumption of mutant beast meat, his vision had become far superior to that of ordinary people. He saw a blockade line from afar. Several vehicles were blocking the way, but no people were visible. They're hiding in the nearby buildings, around 30 people, Ran Shiyu immediately said. Hiding in buildings was a common tactic to avoid zombies. At that moment, a flag was extended from one of the windows and waved a few times. Captain Jiang, they're signaling us, asking who we are, Zhu Changqing said. Respond to them. Okay. Jiang Lushur saw another flag rise from the top of a military off-road vehicle, also waving. He didn't understand the flag language, but it seemed like an exchange of information. They're asking us to move forward, Zhu Changqing said. As the convoy slowly approached the blockade, Jiang Lushur started to feel something strange. Their men remained hidden, they didn't come out to help move the vehicles at all. We're in a hurry. Please move the barricade quickly. Zhu Changqing shouted. At that moment, a voice came from a window. You're from Zhonghai Safety Zone, escorting scientists, right? Since you know, then please hurry up, Zhu Changqing replied. Before relocating the scientists from Zhonghai Safety Zone to Xingqing, both sides had reached an agreement via broadcast. When they exchanged flag signals earlier, he had also reported his unit's identity. It made sense for them to know. We've been waiting for you. From here, the scientists will be under our protection. Please cooperate, the voice said. Hand over the scientists? Upon hearing this, Jiang Lushur, who had been watching the window, confirmed the strange feeling in his heart. Just then, vroom, two military trucks rushed out from the side alley and blocked the rear of Jiang Lushur's convoy. Front and back sealed off. This military unit definitely had a problem. Seeing this, Zhu Changqing froze for a moment, then immediately said through the walkie-talkie, all units, be on alert. Which unit of Xingqing Base City are you from, and whose orders are you following? The order I received was to escort the scientists into Xinghai Base City. Before that, I will not hand them over to anyone. Zhu Changqing said. We received orders for you to transfer the scientists to us, the man said coldly. These people are not from Xinghai Base City, Ran Shiyu suddenly said. She had been sensing the man who spoke and could confirm that these people were not part of the base city's military. Jiang Lushur immediately passed Ran Shiyu's judgment to Zhu Changqing. Zhu Changqing was shocked. A military force appearing in Xingqing wasn't from Xingqing Base City? I need to request instructions first. Anyway, we're not leaving Xingqing, so there's no need to block us like this, it'll affect the scientists' morale, Zhu Changqing said. Heh, request instructions? Never mind how you plan to do that, there's no need for you to request anything. Since you've entered Xingqing, you have to follow our orders. A man around 30, wearing a military uniform with a leather jacket over it, stood at the window watching the convoy and spoke coldly. As a military man, he knew very well that communication methods were now completely down. Even base cities had to use radio broadcasts to communicate. This convoy from Zhonghai Safety Zone was completely isolated and without support. These people weren't falling for it. Zhu Changqing's face darkened, he knew the other side had torn off the pretense. Forcibly break through, Zhu Changqing gritted his teeth and said. As the order was given, a military off-road vehicle suddenly revved and turned sharply, while gun barrels extended from the windows, aiming at the two military trucks blocking their rear. The other side hadn't expected the convoy to react so decisively. Of course, they didn't know that this team had a psychic ability user who could sense emotional fluctuations. Bang bang bang. The military off-road vehicle charged straight toward the two military trucks. At the same time, the man in the leather jacket gave the order, open fire. Shoot out their tires. Suddenly, a burst of dense gunfire rang out. Zhu Changqing was so angry his veins bulged. These people actually dared to shoot, didn't they know there were scientists in the vehicles? Keep going. Jiang Lushur said through the walkie-talkie. At the same time, he told Ing, keep moving forward. Originally, the minibus was behind the military off-road vehicle, but now, while the off-road vehicle turned to charge backward, the minibus suddenly roared and shot forward, charging between the two military trucks. This minibus had seemed the least eye-catching vehicle to them, usually just a living quarters vehicle, but now it was charging straight toward the gunfire? The man in the leather jacket was stunned. He had seen people seek death before, but rarely this eagerly. "Perfect, shoot out that minibus's tires," he ordered. Bang bang bang. The minibus was large, and at such close range, it was like a standing target. Several bullets instantly hit its tires. At high speeds, getting a tire shot is very dangerous. The leather jacket man seemed to already see the vehicle crashing into a shop or slamming into a wall. However, the minibus had upgraded bulletproof tires. Bullets hitting the tires had absolutely no effect. The man didn't react in time, he just watched the minibus keep charging forward, not knowing what had happened. Then, from the strange disc-like turret on top of the minibus, a long barrel extended. Immediately, a strong sense of life and death danger enveloped the leather-jacketed man. The hair all over his body stood on end, and he instinctively rolled sideways. Bang! A stream of warm liquid splashed across his face. Shards of broken glass scattered everywhere. Thud! The man watched with wide eyes as a soldier who had just been standing behind him had his head blown apart. The headless body was blasted into the corner of the room, crashing hard into the wall. Fresh blood stained half the wall and splattered everywhere. What the hell? The leather jacket man felt his scalp explode. The window he stood at used reflective mercury glass, they could see out, but others couldn't see in. Even during the earlier conversation, he only opened a small gap, just to avoid exposing himself to enemy fire. But the minibus gunner's bullet, how did it shoot straight at him like it had eyes? The man was certain, that bullet was meant for his head. He dodged, Ran Shiyu said. Yeah, Jiang Lushur replied in his mind, feeling a little regretful. That man was the commander of this group. Killing him would have saved a lot of trouble. But the man was also an ability user, highly sensitive to danger. Bang bang bang. The others hiding behind the windows weren't so lucky. They weren't ability users and didn't have that kind of danger perception. The minibus charged forward under gunfire, and Jiang Lushur kept pulling the trigger. Broken glass mixed with blood, these people didn't even know how they died. The leather-jacketed man's eyes turned red. He quickly ordered, "Everyone get away from the windows, hide." Damn it. Does this guy have X-ray vision? The man cursed angrily. After learning that Zhonghai Safety Zone would be escorting scientists, they had been lying in wait nearby. He originally thought the convoy would arrive days earlier. Only today did it appear. Though Zhonghai to Xingqing was far, it shouldn't have taken this long. What, were they sightseeing along the way? After finally catching the convoy, the man thought it would be an easy ambush, a straightforward task. But he hadn't expected such a terrifying sniper to appear from the minibus. However, now that all his soldiers had taken cover, that sniper's terrifying skill was neutralized. The man quickly calmed down. The sniper's aim was scary, but that was only because he had caught them off guard. Now that they were prepared, it wouldn't be as bad. They had set up barricades, outnumbered the convoy 2 to 3 times, had well-trained soldiers, and they had the scientists as leverage. The convoy stood no chance. Seeing the minibus had been trapped inside the shop, the man in the leather jacket spat and said with satisfaction, "Let's see how arrogant he can be now." The minibus, stuck inside the narrow shop, was practically at his mercy. While he gave orders for some of his men to take care of the military SUV carrying the scientists, he also had a few others tie grenades together into a bundle. "If you don't surrender, I'll throw grenades into the shop. No matter how tough your vehicle is, can it withstand explosions? Besides, this building isn't exactly solid. Even if the explosion doesn't kill you, being buried alive won't feel good either," the leather-jacketed man said coldly. The distance between them and the minibus was actually quite close. He only had to raise his voice a bit for everything he said to be clearly heard inside the minibus. "If you surrender now, you can still keep your lives," the man shouted. But if those inside the minibus continued resisting, he'd have no choice but to give up the vehicle and order an attack. "Brother Jiang, some of them are going to surround Captain Zhu," Ran Shiyu said. "How many are still on this side?" Jiang Lushur asked. 6 people, Ran Shiyu answered. "He wants to defeat us in parts? That idea's not bad." Ing. Jiang Lushur had already summoned the starseed interface, and the base vehicle transformed from its first form to its second form. Boom! With his field of vision suddenly rising, the base vehicle changed from a minibus into a mining truck. There's no fixed standard for shop ceiling height, but it's usually over 2.8 meters. This one was about 4 meters, which is relatively high. But the mining truck was 6.5 meters tall, 7.7 meters wide, and 12 meters long. A behemoth like that couldn't possibly fit in this shop. Just the tires alone were nearly enough to fill the entire space. Creak, creak. The leather-jacketed man, confident of victory, suddenly heard a strange sound. Then he felt the floor and walls begin to shake. The paintings hanging on the walls were trembling, and the ceiling light was swaying. What's going on? The man didn't know what was happening. He hadn't heard the minibus trying to reverse out either. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of something splitting came from all directions, causing even the soldiers around him to feel a sense of foreboding. At this moment, the man himself began to panic. Quick! Get out of here now, he shouted. Suddenly, that cracking sound grew louder, and then rapid. Boom! The wall in front of them dented inward, then burst open. Among the crumbling cement and bricks, a blinding flash of bright yellow appeared. What the hell is that? The man looked up, stunned beyond belief. It was actually a vehicle. Standing in front of this vehicle, he felt utterly insignificant. Where the hell did this vehicle come from? And where did the minibus go? But there was no time to wonder. As the vehicle appeared, bricks began to fall in large chunks. It had blown out the entire building. 2 soldiers upstairs had felt tremors below their feet, but they never expected the floor beneath them would be shoved up and broken apart the next second. A vehicle emerged from right under their feet. That was something beyond imagination. Boom, boom, boom. The deafening noise even left the people outside dumbfounded. The soldiers who were just about to surround Zhu Chongqing's group watched in shock as the building swelled like a balloon, its walls and glass bursting apart. The giant mining truck appeared in their view. V-room. The mining truck roared as its ramming function activated. Ing, driving it, suddenly reversed. 2 mid-sized off-road vehicles had their front ends jammed into the shop's doorway, completely blocking the way. Even if the minibus wanted to reverse, it couldn't escape quickly. But to the mining truck, these 2 vehicles were like toy cars. Its massive tires rolled right over them, flattening them like pancakes. Boom! The behemoth forced its way out of the building, then turned to face the vehicles blocking Zhu Chongqing's group. Seeing this, the people in those vehicles, and the nearby soldiers, felt their scalps go numb. In front of this monster, they were all too weak. Jiang Lushur didn't give them any time to react. As he used the walkie-talkie to tell Zhu Chongqing and Zhang Hai to move aside, the mining truck had already roared to life and charged at them. Acceleration function activated. The mining truck's speed instantly surged. The 2 vehicles had just started to reverse, but were already rammed. Struck by the mining truck, the vehicles were completely powerless. They were thrown sideways and flipped heavily onto the ground. At that moment, Jiang Liushur's gun barrel also extended from the window, along with a flash of electricity. Within Ran Shiyu's psychic field, the soldiers who had been closing in were now fully exposed. The collision, the electricity, and the bullets, the soldiers didn't even have time to run. Terrifying, even Zhu Chongqing and the others were stunned. They had originally been the ones ambushed, but now everything had flipped. The ambushers were now fleeing in panic. Just then, a figure quietly appeared at the shop's back door. The leather-jacketed man's head was covered in blood. The shop had turned into a pile of rubble. The building was about to collapse, and the inside was completely hollow. He had nearly been crushed to death. The others were either crushed or squeezed to death by the mining truck. Some might still be alive, but right now, he couldn't care less about them. Relying on the physical strength of an ability user, the man survived, and had the ability to escape. But just as he was about to slip away, a cold and indifferent female voice suddenly rang in his mind. Don't move. Unless you can run several kilometers in the next few seconds, you will die. The voice was pleasant, but the words chilled him to the bone. He already felt a faint yet deadly threat locked onto him. That voice must belong to the psychic user, and that sniper, at any moment, could aim and pull the trigger. In all his years of surviving the apocalypse, this was a first. Unable to even see the enemy's face, hiding in a back alley, yet frozen in place, too scared to move, just waiting for them to come and deal with him. Humiliation. The soldiers either fled or died. Very soon, the outside became quiet. Come here, the woman's voice sounded again in the man's mind. The leather-jacketed man's face showed a trace of anger. He had already followed the order to stand still, and now they wanted him to walk over? He looked around. This alley was only a few dozen meters long, but that huge vehicle couldn't get in. This alley is only a few dozen meters long. And even if we can't get in, we can crash through the walls, the voice continued. Goosebumps rose all over the man's skin. What the hell, this psychic user could even sense his thoughts. You have 3 seconds. Sweat appeared on his forehead, and his palms were soaked. At that moment, Jiang Lushur had already stopped the mining truck in the middle of the road. He was staring at the spot where the man was hiding. After 3 seconds, the man slowly walked out from the alley. Seeing the full appearance of the mining truck, he was even more shocked. A vehicle like this, ordinary people had almost no chance to see one, let alone see it on a city street. The truck took up the entire width of the street. Compared to it, even the surrounding 2- and 3-story buildings looked tiny, and all other vehicles looked like toys. Even standing in front of it with a machine gun would feel like stabbing an elephant with a toothpick. The leather-jacketed man finally saw the gunner on the truck, a young man around 20. The earlier events had already shown that this behemoth was the same vehicle that used to be the minibus. It was just such a bizarre transformation that the man still didn't fully believe it. But now, he was completely sure. What the hell, is this a transformer, he thought. He guessed it was likely due to some kind of ability. After the apocalypse, all kinds of abilities had appeared. Even though this was the first time he had seen one like this, it wasn't entirely beyond belief. The man was holding a pistol, but now he threw it to the ground and said, "I actually have no grudge against you. I was just following orders. You don't have to kill me, do you?" "Whose orders?" Jiang Lushur asked. "Commander He's," the man answered bluntly. He noticed there were several women inside the vehicle. One of them, a girl with gray eyes, gave off a mysterious aura. The moment he saw her, he felt as if he were being monitored. That was the psychic ability user. With her around, lying was pointless. "Commander He?" Zhu Changqing frowned. There wasn't much communication between Xingqing Base City and Zhonghai Safety Zone, so Zhu Changqing didn't know who the military leaders here were. The current Xingqing Base City is completely different from what it used to be. Because of conflicts over benefits and power, the army has splintered into many factions. "The one I follow, Commander He, is just one of them," the man said. Zhu Changqing was shocked. So something like this had happened in Xingqing Base City? Jiang Lushur was surprised too, but not overly so. Zhonghai Safety Zone also had power struggles, just not as severe as in Xingqing, where it had led to outright division. These changes hadn't been mentioned in the base city's broadcasts, so they had escorted the scientists here without knowing anything, completely unprepared for what awaited them. "Then why did you try to take the scientists?" Jiang Lushur asked. "Commander He's faction is one of the weaker ones. Although Xinghai Base City is divided, the base itself is still the wealthiest faction. They have food and manpower. We wanted to use the scientists to trade for resources. In fact, there are likely other groups eyeing the scientists too. If you had entered from another gate, you would have run into someone else," the man explained while taking a few steps forward. Zhu Changqing didn't know what to say. He had thought they had finally arrived safely, only to find the destination was full of traps. Don't try to change the subject," Jiang Lushur suddenly sneered. "You tried to seize the scientists. What exactly were you planning to do to us? Your killing intent was clearly sensed. Even now, you're not honestly surrendering, are you?" As Jiang Lushur finished speaking, the man's expression suddenly changed. He let out a roar and sprang forward like a leopard, his movements hard to track. He was charging straight toward the vehicle where Zhu Changqing and the others were. Inside that vehicle were Professor Qin and her daughter. He had already locked onto Qin Nannan, just a 10-year-old girl. If he captured her, he could use her as leverage. While answering questions earlier, he had already been sizing things up. Trying to negotiate for survival with information was pointless. He had encountered this kind of situation many times, and always killed the other party after getting what he wanted. Sometimes, he even mocked their stupidity before killing them. Putting your life in someone else's hands, how dumb could you be? At the same time, he pulled open his coat, revealing a vest full of grenades. With those grenades, and a hostage, that would be his real chance at survival. The man suddenly unleashed his ability. His speed was like lightning, and Zhu Changqing and the others hadn't even reacted yet. At this life-or-death moment, he had activated all his power, everything depended on this one move. But Jiang Lushur had already raised his weapon. His vision slowed. The enhanced agility made his hands incredibly fast. Without even needing to aim, he pulled the trigger instantly. The man could never have imagined Jiang Lushur wasn't just a sharpshooter. He also had a brain domain ability. Not only that, but he had enhanced agility and activated bloodline evolution. Most people only had one ability. Even if he had a vivid imagination, the man would never have thought someone could have so many powers. And when all these abilities combined into a single trigger pull, the speed and accuracy of that shot were beyond imagination. The man never expected that even while strapped with grenades, Jiang Lushur would still dare to shoot. Bang! The charging man was suddenly hit like by a speeding car, his body was thrown backward violently and slammed into the ground. Then came the unbearable pain, rushing in like a tide. He screamed in agony. When he looked down, both his legs, below the thighs, were completely gone. His thighs were a mangled mess of flesh and blood, too horrible to look at. My legs! The man in the leather jacket's face turned extremely pale. The intense pain, and witnessing his own legs being lost, pushed his mind to the brink of collapse. At that moment, Zhu Changqing and the others, as well as Professor Qin and her daughter, reacted and, looking at the man on the ground, revealed expressions of lingering fear. Even if he hadn't succeeded in the hostage attempt, just allowing him to get close would have forced Jiang Lushur and them to act more cautiously. And in the split second of electricity and fire, Jiang Lushur stopped this man. His marksmanship was simply transcendent. Ah, the man in the leather jacket kept screaming. If he weren't an ability user, a normal person, after having both legs broken, would have passed out from the unimaginable pain long ago. He trembled as he reached toward the grenades strapped to his body. In this agony, it would feel almost better to detonate them, and at this close proximity, perhaps he could take someone with him. Ah? The man's palm was stepped on by a foot, fully cutting off his idea of detonating the grenades. Jiang Lushur looked down at him coldly and asked, "That commander he of yours, where is he?" The man in the leather jacket wailed, while Jiang Lushur calmly said, "From now until you lose so much blood you go into shock, you have a bit of time. Think carefully." The man was convulsing from the pain, his ability to think drained. Just nearby, in a resort. How many people? Jiang Lushur asked again. Over 10,000, the man's voice trembled. Jiang Lushur lifted his foot and turned to Zhu Changqing and the others who had just exited the vehicle and said, "He's handed over to you." Zhu Changqing gave a signal to one of the soldiers. That soldier immediately drew a dagger and walked over. "Brother Jiang, what do we do now?" Zhu Changqing unconsciously changed the way he addressed Jiang Lushur. What had happened in Xingqing Base City was major. Zhu Changqing clearly was worried. But the vehicle, Jiang Lushur, and the overall strength shown by the Shering squad made Zhu Changqing firm in his decision to hold on to the big fish. By moving with the Shering squad, these scientists and their escort team had the greatest chance of safety. Zhu Changqing was still worried something might happen on the road. Jiang Lushur looked at him briefly, then glanced at the scientists inside the vehicle. He said nothing. These people who tried to hijack the scientists, their purpose was to demand money from Xingqing Base City. Xingqing Base City and Zhonghai Safety Zone have communicated. They still belong to regular military forces, Zhu Changqing said. Then let's head to Xingqing Base City first, Jiang Lushur nodded. Regular military forces were good, but under the current circumstances, they were probably heavily weakened and busy taking care of themselves, right? Jiang Lushur thought so, but said nothing. He had escorted the scientists here, Xingqing Base City still owed him payment. He wouldn't run for nothing. And because of this mutiny, the escort mission's difficulty increased, so payment should reasonably increase too, Jiang Lushur thought. Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan, and a few soldiers went to clean up the battlefield. Except for the soldiers crushed under large slabs of cement and bricks, and those who ran away, they recovered the rest of the guns and ammunition. Even the grenades strapped to the man in the leather jacket were taken. These items could be exchanged for supplies. Zhu Changqing voluntarily said they would take none of that. This ambush had basically been resolved by Jiang Lushur's squad alone. They hadn't helped. It felt bad for them to ask for supplies. The mining truck drove to the rear, then switched back to minibus form and drove forward again. Zhu Changqing and the others saw the minibus revert back and couldn't help but glance twice in surprise. They were curious how Jiang Lushur's ability worked to do this, but since it concerned his personal ability, and he had already avoided such questions, Zhu Changqing and the rest wouldn't ask him. "Let's go," Zhu Changqing said. Because of today's incident, the scientists were quite shaken. Here they were already in the suburbs of Xingqing, the distance to Xingqing Base City wasn't too far. But for safety's sake, they needed to bypass the city center and go along the suburbs to the base city. Under Ran Shiyu's psychic field scanning, the next 4 hours of driving revealed no major emergencies, aside from the zombie numbers increasing. And the zombie hordes could be avoided thanks to Ran Shiyu's detection. Their route was suburban, but after all this was a provincial capital city. The number of zombies had still surged. If those zombies got tangled up, the danger would be considerable, even for Jiang Lushur and them. Let alone Zhu Changqing's group. Their military off-road vehicles, even after reinforcement, couldn't survive surrounded by zombies unharmed. Up ahead is Xingqing Base City. Zhu Changqing's excited voice came through. In the distance, Jiang Lushur already saw a wide great river and a large bridge spanning across the water. Xingqing Base City, on both sides surrounded by river water, and on the other side another long bridge. But that long bridge had collapsed, only a few pillars and a half section of roadway remained. And the large bridge across the river looked very cold and desolate. That bridge before the apocalypse used to light up with colored lights at night, casting reflections on the river surface, multicolored. There would be small boats on the river, very beautiful, Liu Yusin said, looking at the bridge. "You came here before?" Jiang Lushur asked in surprise. He had not heard Liu Yusin mention it while on the road. "No, just seen it on TV." I have some impression, Liu Yusen said. But even having seen it just on TV, now seeing such a desolate scene still made one feel strong emotions. The convoy gradually approached the bridge. On the riverside were residential areas and malls, but at this moment no people were visible, not even zombies. The flower beds were overgrown with weeds. The river water was murky gray, the surface looked calm, but after having seen the big water monster in Jinling, Jiang Lushi and the others wouldn't believe the river was really peaceful. Not sure what it's like inside Qinghai Base City. As they had just entered the bridge, a dozen vehicles drove out from the other side of the road. These vehicles were mostly modified, very fast. Their bodies were stained with a lot of fresh blood, and had dents and scratches, gave off a very iron-blooded feeling. These vehicles pulled up behind Jiang Liushi's convoy. Jiang Lushi turned back to look. These vehicles were likely survivor teams living in Qinghai Base City. Damn, a minibus? On those vehicles, one survivor stared at the back of the minibus in surprise, shouting. These survivors had lived long-term in Qinghai Base City. From the look of it, Jiang Liushi's convoy was entirely unfamiliar. Those two military off-road vehicles and the military truck were all in the lead, only the minibus was trailing. Although they saw military vehicles, the army of Qinghai Base City, these people all knew them, and these clearly weren't. Some troops of exiled soldiers and regular survivors? Newcomers, right? A survivor's face showed a hint of interest. He stepped the accelerator hard. The off-road vehicle with iron grates installed over all the windows quickly approached the minibus. When it came alongside the minibus driver's seat, a bald-headed survivor in the passenger seat pounded the iron grid twice. Hey! The minibus's window glass was surprisingly coated film glass, you couldn't see inside from outside. He knocked repeatedly for several times, then pressed the horn. The window finally opened. Where are you coming from? What's been happening on the way? The bald survivor asked loudly. His words stopped short when he saw what appeared. When the window rolled down, the face that appeared was extremely beautiful, black hair, fair skin, a small elegant nose, a cold temperament. She turned her head and glanced at the off-road vehicle beside them. Damn! The bald survivor's reaction was large. He widened his eyes, then shouted, beautiful lady. The driver is actually a woman. Other survivors in the off-road vehicle pressed to the window, all competing to get a look. Ying's appearance was set by the starseed, originally perfectly formed, no flaws in skin or features. A beauty like that, before the apocalypse, she would have caused heads to turn. After the apocalypse, even more so. But facing those people, Ying showed no reaction at all. To her, aside from Jiang Lushi, all others were disposable lives she could clear any time. At that moment, another window opened and Jiang Zhuiying appeared. What's with the shouting? Are you waiting for iron window tears? Suddenly being shouted at, the survivors immediately looked over. Another youthful beauty. On this minibus? So many beauties? Beautiful lady, don't misunderstand, we thought you were newcomers, so we wanted to ask about the outside situation, the bald survivor said with a grin. Beautiful lady, if you've just arrived at Qinghai and there are things you don't know, you can ask us, another survivor said, playing with a dagger in his hand. We're one of the top survivor teams in Qinghai. Call me brother, we've got your back. Each one carried guns, muscles hard and thick. On two of their vehicles, they had tied mutant beast corpses still dripping blood. These two mutant beasts were huge, 6 to 7 tons each, normally a survivor team would have trouble hunting one. Yet they brought back two. However, Jiang Zhuiying just glanced casually and a trace of disdain appeared on her face. Just this? Her reaction left the survivors dumbstruck. They looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Oh ho, beauty won't even look at us, the bald survivor yelled. Jiang Zhuiying didn't bother to respond. Meanwhile, the convoy had crossed the big bridge. Qinghai Base City had high city walls by the river. Inside the walls there was a 10-meter-wide moat, filled with rebar. Beyond the moat was another higher wall. At intervals there were bunkers, darker gun and machine gun muzzles facing the bridge and river. To deal with zombies, you only needed to defend the bridge. The walls were likely to defend against river monsters. But if it were the level of the monster in Jinling Port, those walls were just decoration. Jiang Lushi thought that as the convoy reached the city gate. Unlike Zhonghai Safety Zone, Qinghai Base City had only one city gate. The gate was heavily guarded. On the gate was a steel roadblock about 1 meter high, with 10-centimeter spikes inside and out. If a vehicle tried to break through, the result would be extremely brutal. I don't know if it was added after the mutiny. Zhang Hai, sitting in the military truck driver's seat, said to Sun Kuan. At the gate, some regular survivors were undergoing quarantine. When Jiang Liushi's convoy arrived, soldiers holding guns ordered them to stop immediately. TSK, why did it stop? Won't let us in. The survivors who followed had arrived too. The bald survivor took a white look from Jiang Zhuing right in front of his own companions. He was upset and spoke in a sarcastic tone. "Yo, brother Zhang, how are you?" The bald man smiled and greeted a guard soldier. The soldier obviously knew these survivors and exchanged a few casual words. At that moment, an officer walked out from the city gate. The bald man's eyes lit up. He quickly took out a cigarette. "Captain Li, good day." Captain Li was a junior officer guarding the gate. He dealt most with them survivors and his position was important. But Captain Li didn't glance at him. He walked straight to one of the military off-road vehicles. Then a man got out of inside. The bald man watched them say a few words. Then Captain Li saluted that man, standing very straight. "Hurry, lift the roadblock. Let Captain Zhu's group in," Captain Li said. The bald man froze. These weren't exiled soldiers after all, otherwise Captain Li wouldn't know them. He felt a bit meaningless. No wonder beauties won't look at us, turns out we're clinging to the officer's thigh. At that moment, Captain Zhu and Captain Li walked together over. The minibus's door opened at the same moment. A very young man got out of the minibus. Captain Zhu stood straight, loudly saluted, "Brother Jiang." Then two more beauties got out of the vehicle. These two were new faces. "This here is the brother Jiang I told you about. And these two ladies, this is Miss Ran Qiu, and this is Miss Li Yusin," Captain Zhu introduced. Captain Li looked at Jiang Lushur, somewhat surprised. Just earlier, Captain Zhu said they reached safely this time thanks entirely to Jiang Lushur and his team. He didn't expect the team to be so many women and one man. Also, Jiang Lushur didn't look like some ability user who exuded dangerous aura, big body, muscles bulging. He looked just like a college student. "Pleasure to meet you," Captain Li quickly saluted. The bald man and others were stunned. Damn, with so many beauties. And the two officers were being super polite to him. Especially Captain Zhu, utterly respectful. That's quite a status. In the apocalypse, having status and beautiful women, that's the dream life. To the bald man, this felt like the ultimate life he expected. He envied that man so much. At that moment, Jiang Zhuing also got off the vehicle. Captain Zhu said, "This is Miss Jiang Zhuing." Jiang Zhuing glanced toward the bald man and his companions, rolled her eyes, then reached to link arms with Jiang Lushur. "She is Brother Zhang's biological sister," Captain Zhu diligently introduced. Holy crap. The bald man suddenly felt like he'd been slapped twice in the face. They were not clinging to the officer's thigh, instead, the officer had to curry favor with her. The city gate guard Captain Li, after confirming Jiang Lushur and their identities, went off to report upwards. Very soon a white SUV drove out from within the city. After the SUV stopped, a woman in military uniform stepped out from the driver's seat. She wore leather boots, her hair casually tied at the back of her head, her features were very sculpted, and her wheat-colored skin gave a wild beauty. The woman in uniform strode over, she walked with power, her aura full. Behind her followed another officer. "Why, it's Colonel Xia who's come," Captain Song said surprisedly. Hearing this, Zhu Changqing understood that Colonel Xia seemed special. "She is?" Captain Song lowered his voice. "In our Xingqing base city, the three most powerful generals, Colonel Xia is the granddaughter of one of them. Could it be General Xia Yongfeng?" Zhu Changqing's expression suddenly became serious. Xia Yongfeng was, in fact, the big brother of the military region here in Xingqing. His rank and position were about the same as General Zhang. When he was younger, he had participated in the Southern Campaign and had great prestige and power here in Xingqing. Actually, Zhu Changqing, at his level, could not go into more detail. He had once heard General Zhang mention Xia Yongfeng's name. General Zhang's evaluation of him was, not to be messed with. Someone that General Zhang considered, not to be messed with, left a deep impression on Zhu Changqing. So the granddaughter of Xia Yongfeng, naturally, would not be a normal person. "Greetings, I am Xia Sun." The Colonel Xia walked forward and saluted, her voice was cold. Before Zhu Changqing could say anything, Xia Sun's eyes swept through the crowd. Her gaze passed over Jiang Liushur's face, and when she saw Ran Qiu and the others, she paused slightly. "These few scientists you are escorting, who are they?" Xia Sun asked. Professor Qin and the others hurriedly responded, "That would be us. Thank you for your efforts. Our research institute here can't compare to Zhonghai, mostly we are focused on restoration of production. I will take you inside and make sure your lives will be properly arranged," Xia Sun said. So Colonel Xia is here specifically to receive the scientists, Zhu Changqing understood. Compared with Xia Sun, they were just common foot soldiers, of course she was not here to meet them. "Captain Song," Xia Sun turned to Captain Song, "arrange for these people to undergo quarantine. I will go ahead." Xia Sun left in a whirlwind. "Everyone, follow me," Captain Song said. Jiang Lusher frowned and said, "What does this mean?" Seeing Jiang Lusher's dark face, Captain Song looked somewhat puzzled. "It's just what Colonel Xia said. She said what I heard, we escort the scientists over, and then just go to do quarantine and that's it." Jiang Lusher said. "Rude." Jiang Zhuing also said in displeasure. This female officer came over, said nothing to them, then turned and prepared to leave, and in front of them made Captain Song take the scientists to do quarantine. They had traveled so far only to be met with such a cold face. With Jiang Zhuing's temper, how could she tolerate it? Zhu Changqing felt a chill in his heart and thought, this is bad. Indeed, Xia Sun's attitude was really indifferent. But Zhu Changqing, thinking of her identity, did not care too much. With Xia Yongfeng's power in Xingqing Bay City, Xia Sun would naturally not need to be cordial with foot soldiers like them. But Jiang Lusher's group was also not someone to mess with. Xia Sun's steps stopped immediately. She turned her head, her face still cold as ice. "You are the survivor team that's participating in the escort?" "That's right." Zhang Hai spit through his teeth, acting casually. "Isn't that obvious? What, are we here on sightseeing tourism?" Xia Sun said expressionlessly, "Escort is your duty, and my duty is to receive these scientists, not to be courteous to you." "Receive? Did I say I handed them to you?" Jiang Lusher grew angry. When General Zhang asked him to escort, that used a "please." Now it's become your duty? A survivor team has no affiliation with the military, so how can they have a duty? What do you mean? Watch your words, the officer behind Xia Sun said at once. Xia Sun raised an eyebrow. Although her rank in Xingqing Bay City was not high, there were almost no people who dared speak to her like that. And in front of the military, the survivor team dared not speak recklessly. Yet these survivors were being sarcastic in front of her, and acting tough. "Oh? Not handing over? What if I insist on taking them anyway?" Xia Sun said coldly. "You can try." Jiang Lusher said. At the city gate, there were hundreds of soldiers, countless artillery, machine guns. If a fight broke out, they would certainly hesitate to act fully, for fear of the mice destroying the cat? Here means they would worry about broader consequences. Chu Zhongshan, as a military commissioner, Jiang Lusher had been able to infiltrate Zhonghai's safety zone and behead him, let alone this woman. Arrogant. The officer saw Jiang Lusher so high-handed, openly threatening under heavy guard, he immediately reached for his waist. But as soon as he did, his face changed. "Are you looking for this?" Jiang Lusher held a pistol in his hand and said wryly. The officer's face changed drastically. The gun Jiang Lusher held was his gun. And he had his gun taken from him openly, yet he didn't even feel a thing. The officer was extremely angry. Xia Sun also was somewhat surprised, but remained calm. This was just a survivor team. In front of the military they couldn't raise a storm. "Do you know what the consequences of what you're doing are?" The officer angrily said. Losing face so much in front of Colonel Xia, how could he not be furious? Zhu Changqing's cold sweat almost came down his forehead. If they really fought. He bit his teeth and silently signaled to the warriors. At once, Xia Sun saw these people move, forming a small surrounding circle. These soldiers actually chose to act with this survivor team? Just then, Professor Qin's daughter Qin Nannan suddenly broke free and ran to Jiang Zhuing's side. The little head peeped from behind her and resolutely said, "I am not going with you." Xia Sun froze immediately. The little girl suddenly did this and completely disrupted her entire plan. If this hostage was voluntarily walking over to the survivors, what could she do if they actually fought? Xia Sun glanced at Jiang Lusher. This survivor was fearless, perhaps because of this? On the escort journey, the scientists had developed trust in the escort team, so they wouldn't cooperate with them. "I apologize for my earlier words. Please let the scientists walk with me," Xia Sun said. "You will, after your body check is done, have someone responsible for arranging your food and lodging. Regarding what comes next, someone will connect with you for work," Xia Sun said. However, after Xia Sun finished speaking, Jiang Lusher still stood steadily there, motionless, with no intention of handing over Qin Nannan. Xia Sun frowned. "I have already apologized." Jiang Zhuing glanced at the officer. The officer immediately felt like spitting blood. He already lost a great deal of face when his gun was taken. But since Xia Sun apologized, what else could he say? The officer gritted his teeth and forced himself to speak. "Just now I acted impulsively. Please don't take it to heart." "Heh." Jiang Lusher gave a faint laugh. "My gun," the officer said in a restrained tone. If he didn't get his service gun back, he would truly become a laughingstock. Jiang Lusher didn't intend to get into too much conflict with these people. He threw the pistol back to the officer and said calmly, "Don't get impulsive next time." The officer caught the pistol. Inside he had a torrent of emotions, yet on the surface he couldn't say a word. When had a survivor dressed like a decent person ever taught him a lesson? Sister Zhuiying, Qin Nannan still a little reluctant pulled at Jiang Zhuiying's clothes. On the journey she had watched a lot of anime with Jiang Zhuiying. In the apocalypse such entertainment was extremely precious. After all, Qin Nannan was still a child. Jiang Zhuiying stroked her hair and said, "It's okay. I'll have them give you our address. You can come over and play every day." Xia Sun's brow slightly knitted. These scientists capable of agricultural development were important to Xingqing Base City. Although they had food stockpiles, they couldn't just sit and eat them empty. Also during the unrest, many food supplies were stolen by the splintered armies. Scholarly scientists often had stubborn temperaments and might not obey orders. They needed to be treated with courtesy. If Qin Nannan truly wanted to visit these survivors, she couldn't stop her. After they walked a short distance, the officer behind was still filled with resentment and felt embarrassed. His face burned. These survivors, after finishing one escort mission, act like they've got their tails in the air. Don't know their weight, yet they make you apologize, Colonel Xia. Xia Sun said calmly, after the apocalypse, all kinds of ability users appear. A little person who gets some success. Why bother with him? She had seen many people like Jiang Lushur. Once they gained some power, they became arrogant, acted like big brothers, chased women. There were too many such people. The officer nodded in full agreement. With Xia Sun's identity and status, indeed it was unworthy to argue with such people. After Xia Sun and her group walked away, Captain Song's attitude toward Jiang Lushur and the others changed. "You people over here," Captain Song said in a purely businesslike tone. Zhu Changqing noticed the change in Captain Song's attitude and sighed inwardly. "Brother Jiang, that woman just now, we definitely offended her. But judging by her attitude she doesn't seem to hold it in heart. Yet her entourage, and some of her subordinates, might give us some trouble," Zhu Changqing quietly said to Jiang Lushur. "You still don't know that woman's background. She is the granddaughter of a general in this base city," Zhu Changqing said. "Granddaughter?" Jiang Lushur just nodded. He realized this woman probably had considerable backing, though he did not expect her to be a general's granddaughter. Zhu Changqing shook his head and bitterly smiled. He had no hesitation in killing a general's only son, a general's granddaughter. That title held no deterrent over Jiang Lushur. "Once we enter the city area later, let's first see what the situation is," Zhu Changqing said. They would no longer return to Zhonghai safety zone. This base city might become their foothold. But if they could be intercepted when still almost a step away from the base city, then the situation in this base city was by no means optimistic. The quarantine station of Xingqing Base City was right next to the city gate, inside a large shop. Steel-reinforced protective barriers were welded around it. People were checked behind the barrier, and beside it stood 5 or 6 soldiers carrying live ammo. If someone was found showing signs of infection, they would be shot on the spot. Not only survivors arriving from other places had to undergo inspection, but survivor teams just returning to the base city also had to undergo it. Here Jiang Lushur saw 2 other survivor teams. They too carried full loads of spoils, huge mutant beast corpses, flesh and blood blurred. Viewing them at close range gave a large visual shock, as if facing prehistoric monsters. These survivors also gave the impression of many battles fought. "Feels like the survivors here are far stronger compared to Zhonghai's," Zhu Changqing quietly remarked. These soldiers' eyes were not bad. Naturally they could see each of these survivors had seen many battles. Even normal people among them exuded a very dangerous aura. These survivors' bodies were very solid. On their exposed arms and calves were all muscles. Everywhere you could see old scars. These were formed by crawling through life and death fights. Jiang Lushur nodded, then turned his gaze to the mutant beasts. There seemed to be many mutant beasts around Xingqing Base City. Such large mutant beasts were not so common in Zhonghai safety zone. Jiang Lushur didn't know much about Xingqing, only that there was a quite famous mountain, and a national-level forest park, 300 kilometers away another larger forest park known across the country. With that, wild animals naturally would be many. If there are many mutant beasts, maybe here one can hunt a level 2 mutant beast, or the market might have level 2 mutant beast crystal cores for sale, Jiang Lushur thought. Originally he agreed to escort the scientists to Xingqing just because he had a base vehicle and could go anywhere in the apocalypse. But now, he had some interest in Xingqing Base City. The military power split. Here should be full of mixed fish and dragons, undercurrents flowing. Level 2 mutant crystal cores, maybe someone really sells them. You people go to this area to get checked. I must watch the gate, I'll go first. Captain Song said coldly. This quarantine station was divided into several areas. Captain Song just casually brought them to one area, with no difference from the other survivors. Seeing such a large group enter, the quarantine station suddenly seemed much more crowded. many survivors undergoing inspection couldn't help but look over. Zhu Changqing and his group of external soldiers were already very conspicuous. Ran Shiyu and the other beauties especially drew attention. Some survivors who looked troublesome themselves were watching them with interest. If it weren't for the large group of soldiers beside them, perhaps they would have joked a bit. The bald men from before were also inside the quarantine station. At first they were scared, but they didn't expect to meet Jiang Lushi and the others again so soon. They thought they were so awesome, but in the end weren't they the same as them? This quarantine station was prepared for ordinary people and ordinary survivors. The military would never carry out checks here. Thinking of how Jiang Zhuiying and the others had looked at them like they were idiots before, the bald man couldn't contain his anger. What made it worse was that he had thought this group had high status, so he chickened out then. Shit, acting cool in front of me, the bald man burned with rage. Kid, want to have a fight later? The bald man asked with a grim smile. The other survivors, who had only watched silently when they saw a group of soldiers earlier, now saw someone speaking up to provoke, and it seemed like these people had a grudge. They all showed faces of enjoying the spectacle. Some even recognized the bald man's crew. Aren't they from Peng Fei's team? Peng Fei was the bald man's boss. Ordinary survivors would respectfully call him Brother Peng. Hearing a lazy voice call him by name, the bald man immediately looked over. Speaking was a 16 or 17-year-old boy who had just gotten off a vehicle and was leaning against it, watching the scene with interest. If it were some other kid, the bald man, to show off in front of his boss, would have slapped him already. But seeing this youth, the bald man had no temper at all. He even felt a chill. Damn, how did I not notice he was here before? Peng Fei, I didn't expect you to be so badass that someone dares offend you. Looks like a newcomer, huh? Wow, this is challenging the authority of an old team like yours, the youth continued. Behind the bald man's crew, a middle-aged man with an ordinary face stood alone, frowned, and said, "Let our people play, it's just a small matter." Qiao Laoqi, stop speaking so sarcastically. Qiao Laoqi was a member of a newly rising team. Survivor teams competed with each other. His words were clearly mocking Peng Fei's team, saying even a newcomer to the base city couldn't be suppressed. Peng Fei couldn't help but find it grating. But since we're in the city, don't go too far. Peng Fei said this to the bald man. The bald man chuckled, don't worry boss, at worst I'll cripple him one hand and one foot. Which leg or which hand, who knows, maybe even the third one. Seeing Jiang Lushi with so many beauties, the bald man was extremely jealous. If he crippled him, could those beauties still go with him? At this, Jiang Lushi spoke, are you done with the bullshit? These people really treated him like a dish. He hadn't said anything yet, and they had already decided the fight's outcome for him. So you say you dare take the fight? Base city rules, personal grudges, one-on-one, no fatalities, the bald man said, eyes flashing with ferocity. His ability wasn't very strong, but he'd killed many people under him. Jiang Lushi looked like a pretty face, his energy fluctuations weren't strong. Who knew what power he had? Maybe some special ability. Such special abilities are most useful to the military, but in a one-on-one fight they might be useless. This kid had always been fawned over, surrounded by beauties. He probably didn't know his worth. He'd be stupid enough to agree when provoked, not wanting to lose face in front of the beauties. To trample this kind of person underfoot, the bald man felt like violently beating a rich second generation before the apocalypse, beating him until he doubted his life. A halo is useless. When your face is underfoot you'll know to beg for mercy. The no fatalities rule was just a rule set by the military, a symbolic restraint on these survivors. But for these survivors, when lives aren't valued, they had too many ways to cripple an opponent. Some ends are worse than death. The bald man was already rubbing his fists. Jiang Lushi looked at him coldly, openly showing disdain. What are you? You deserve to one-on-one with me? Jiang Lushi said this, then looked at Peng Fei. At him, I can still fight a bit more. Peng Fei's eyes widened. He had actually been stepped on. The youth was also stunned. The show just upgraded. Originally he had only teased Peng Fei, but he didn't expect this newcomer to really turn the point at Peng Fei. Peng Fei's team was an old team in the base city. Their strength wasn't top, but Peng Fei himself was an old hand. Many eyed his team, but those with intentions were still watching and hadn't acted, out of caution toward Peng Fei. Being directly stepped on like this at the nose was a first. If Peng Fei couldn't establish his authority this time, his days would be hard. Those with thoughts would immediately start to move. Peng Fei smiled sinisterly, inwardly furious. This newcomer was simply reckless. Kid, you're so arrogant, you won't live long. Peng Fei said word by word. Motherfucker, you're looking for death. The bald man, publicly humiliated by Jiang Lushi, exploded with all his anger. He threw a punch, a thick layer of scales covered his fist, and the edges of the scales were all spikes. The roaring gale directly struck toward Jiang Liusher's face. If this punch landed, his nasal bone would probably break, maybe even fracture his face. An ordinary person hit by this punch would die on the spot. At the same time, the bald man's other hand flicked, and a dagger from his sleeve landed in his palm. A knife to take this kid's life. Zhu Chongqing turned pale, careful. But facing the bald man's sneak attack, Jiang Liusher only snorted. He shifted his body as if he had seen the bald man's move in advance and dodged the fist. Die, the bald man's eyes flashed. But at that moment, a black shadow flicked in Jiang Liusher's hand, the cold muzzle of a gun aimed at the bald man's right hand in the blink of an eye. Bang! A flash of fire, only in an instant. Ah, the bald man's scream suddenly rang out. A spray of blood exploded. With a clatter, a blood-stained dagger fell into the pool of blood. The bald man's right hand was gone. This bald man wanted to cripple him one hand and one foot. How could Jiang Liusher be gentle? In his brain's field of vision, the bald man's small moves were like slow motion, seen clearly. One more leg, right? Jiang Liusher said. The bald man trembled all over in extreme pain. He didn't see how Jiang Liusher had drawn the gun or how he fired without aiming. From his sneak attack to being shot was in the blink of an eye. He hadn't even reacted before Jiang Liusher raised the muzzle again. No, the bald man's pupils contracted violently. Bang! How would Jiang Liusher listen to the bald man's screams? He pulled the trigger again. Too fast. Many survivors didn't even react. 1 second they were waiting to watch the show, and the next, gunshots rang out. The 2 shots came so suddenly that the survivors' nerves tightened instinctively. They all jumped up and reached for their weapons. Peng Tian shouted loudly and grabbed the bald man. After the gunshots, the bald man's whole body shook, and he let out a shrill scream, falling to the ground and twitching. His thigh was blown apart at close range by a Type 54 pistol, completely ruined. 1 hand and 1 leg both crippled. Even if he survived, he'd be a useless wreck. Ah? My leg, the bald man screamed endlessly, his heart filled with despair. Peng Fei hadn't managed to get the bald man to dodge completely. Seeing his miserable state, Peng Fei was furious. He glared coldly at Jiang Liusher and said, "Kid, you're ruthless." That shot from Jiang Liusher had actually been aimed at the bald man's 3rd leg. Some survivors noticed that and instantly felt a chill between their own legs. So fast, Zhu Chongqing muttered to himself. He had seen Jiang Liusher's sniping skills before, but didn't know his quick draw was this strong. Before the apocalypse, the world's fastest gunman could draw and shoot in just 0.02 seconds, while human visual persistence lasted 0.1 seconds, meaning the target could be shot before even seeing the opponent move. That was a true instant kill. The army also had experts skilled in quick-draw shooting, much faster than ordinary gunners. Zhu Chongqing couldn't estimate how fast Jiang Liusher's draw and shot had been, but he could tell it was fast, extremely fast. Even faster than many experts in the army. It was unbelievable. If Jiang Liusher's ability had been shooting-related, Zhu Chongqing could understand, but his ability was clearly mechanical modification. I've changed my mind. If I don't make you regret being born today, I'll count myself the loser, Peng Tian said coldly, his eyes full of killing intent. He hadn't cared about Jiang Liusher before. But he hadn't expected that less than a minute after his words, he'd be slapped in the face. Jiang Liusher looked at Peng Tian calmly and said, "Stop talking nonsense. You're next. Come on." Jiang Liusher stood still, yet spoke to Peng Tian like calling a dog, contemptuously letting him make the first move. For a boss like Peng Tian, this was like having his face stomped on. "I'll make you pay for your arrogance." Peng Tian suddenly growled lowly. His clothes tightened, buttons popped off, revealing bronze-colored muscles covered in scars. In such a fiercely competitive environment, Peng Fei could remain a team leader. He was no ordinary man like the bald one. Peng Fei's ability burst out. His pupils turned yellow-green, gleaming cold and beast-like, and from his body grew one after another, sharp spikes about a foot long. Seeing a man grow spikes from his body was shocking. Li Yusin frowned deeply. She had seen very few battles between ability users. Peng Fei's fists and arms were covered with spikes. His arms, already thick, now were thicker than a grown man's thigh. Whoosh! Peng Fei lunged suddenly, reaching both hands for Jiang Liusher's head. Those spikes could easily pierce Jiang Liusher's eyeballs. If an ordinary person were caught, their head would be instantly riddled with holes. The spikes on Peng Fei's body could both attack and defend. When he approached others, they'd be forced to back away, but he could still push forward. His speed was incredible. He wanted to destroy Jiang Liusher's shooting ability first, then slowly torture him. But Jiang Liusher wasn't afraid at all. Peng Fei's speed looked fast, but in Jiang Liusher's brain domain vision, it was like slow motion. And thanks to his evolved bloodline, Jiang Liusher's body could react the moment he saw something. His agility increased, and he dodged Peng Fei's storm-like attacks. Peng Fei's speed was terrifying. He was like a rolling spiked iron ball, touching meant injury, and contact meant death. Everything he brushed past was torn apart instantly. Even nearby survivors stepped back in panic, afraid of being caught in it. But to everyone's shock, Jiang Liusher dodged all of Peng Fei's frenzied attacks. Wasn't he supposed to be a gun expert? How was his footwork so agile? It made sense that someone good with guns had fast reflexes, but his dodging was unbelievably smooth. Peng Fei had been attacking for a long time. Not only did he fail to kill Jiang Liusher, he hadn't even touched his clothes. It felt as if Jiang Liusher knew all his attack angles in advance, dodging just before each strike, leaving Peng Fei's attacks hitting only empty air. Such a fight, where all strength is wasted, was unbearable. "Let's see you dodge this," Peng Fei shouted, and the spikes on his arms extended again. Each spike grew to half a meter long. More spikes extended all over his body. A strange smell spread from him at the same time. Zhu Changqing and the others smelled it and immediately felt dizzy, quickly covering their noses and mouths. Many animals and insects have scent glands, like skunks, that release not only a foul smell but also have a paralyzing effect. Peng Fei had a similar ability. The scent he emitted through his sweat glands wasn't foul, but it could numb people. Even those not too close felt lightheaded, let alone Jiang Liusher, who was right in front. And in a fight like this, even a moment of daze could be fatal. But when Peng Fei seized the chance and threw a punch at Jiang Liusher dodged as if nothing happened, suddenly reached out from the side, grabbed a spike on Peng Fei's fist, pressed the gun muzzle against it, and pulled the trigger. Bang! Gunfire erupted, blood splattered everywhere. Jiang Liusher stayed calm, still holding the spike, and kept firing. Bang! 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 He didn't even blink. The series of thunderous gunshots left all the survivors stunned. When the shots ended, Jiang Liusher kicked Peng Fei's exposed side, and Peng Fei hit the ground hard. One of the spikes broke off and remained in Jiang Liusher's hand. He glanced at the spike, tossed it aside, and said, "You're too weak." With his evolved bloodline, how could he care about a bit of smell? Peng Fei was covered in blood, twitching in pain, his whole body like a smashed blood bag. Jiang Liusher had avoided all his vital spots and only shot his limbs, but after taking so many bullets, his limbs were basically useless, no different from being dead. Earlier, they talked about crippling Jiang Liusher right to his face. Against people who casually talked about crippling others, how could Jiang Liusher possibly show mercy? He had already realized that the survivors here were even more ruthless than those in Zhonghai safety zone. In this Xingqing-based city, warlords divided the land, and survivor teams lived between the cracks. Competing for resources meant being ruthless was necessary. If you're weak, others will step on your head. Today, that bald man provoked them simply because Jiang Liusher's group were newcomers. Jiang Liusher used full force just to send a warning to these old teams: don't think every newcomer is easy to mess with. If you want to provoke someone, you'd better weigh your own strength first. Otherwise, Peng Fei's miserable end will be yours. Some survivors now looked at Jiang Liusher with different eyes. This young man looked like a college student, not at all fierce like them. Yet when it came to real action, he was so ruthless he didn't even blink, like squashing a stinkbug. Peng Fei was still a veteran, and he ended up falling to a newcomer who had just arrived today. Zhu Changqing, watching from the side, had been holding his breath the whole time and finally let it out. So fierce. Even watching from the sidelines made it hard to breathe. If he were in Peng Fei's place, he couldn't even imagine. At this moment, Jiang Liusher hadn't lowered his gun. Instead, he moved the muzzle and pointed it straight at the teenage boy. "You're next," Jiang Liusher said. This boy had been watching Peng Fei's downfall with schadenfreude, but now Jiang Liusher had suddenly turned on him. The boy's eyes widened instantly. He pointed at his own nose with exaggerated expression and asked, "You mean me can't understand human speech?" Jiang Liusher replied. That boy had stirred things up earlier, using Jiang Liusher as bait to provoke Peng Fei. How could Jiang Liusher forget that? When the survivors saw Jiang Liusher challenging the boy, they were all shocked. This newcomer was really wild. That boy had already acted arrogantly when he showed up, but now he'd met someone who could rival him. Just then, a girl beside the boy sneered coldly and said, "Overestimating yourself." The girl looked around 20, very pure-looking, clinging tightly to the boy's side. Hearing Jiang Liusher provoke her boyfriend, she immediately mocked back. Peng Fei was just a washed-up survivor team leader. But this boy? He was a real ruthless character. Usually when he frowned, she didn't even dare breathe. "You wanna fight me?" Took down Peng Fei and now think you're invincible, the boy laughed exaggeratedly. You had a gun, and they were unarmed. You really think you're strong? Jiang Liusher's gun skills were extremely sharp. The onlookers, since they weren't involved, just watched for fun. They'd focused on his shooting, not the fact that he had a weapon. But even so what if Jiang Liusher used a weapon? If you wanted to use one, you could have too. Peng Fei and the bald man hadn't used weapons either because they didn't have time, or they knew their gun skills were no match for supernatural powers. But some who knew this boy started looking at Jiang Liusher with a bit of schadenfreude too. All you're good at is shooting, right? And you think that's enough to play with me? You're just asking to die. The boy said this as he twisted his neck, and his face suddenly took on a metallic shine. Skin mutation? Or something else? Shit. What are you all doing here? A shout suddenly came from the doorway. The boy looked over, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. Jiang Liusher also looked. A man in his 20s strode in, wearing a military uniform under a leather jacket, with a sharp and fierce face. Brother, the mutation energy from this guy is really strong. Jiang Zhuiying said. Not just Jiang Zhuiying, even the other ability users in the team, especially Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, seemed wary of this soldier. The survivors inside the quarantine station all recognized the soldier, and everyone suddenly felt uneasy. Jiang Liusher raised an eyebrow. This guy had real presence. None of these survivors were pushovers. They all gave off the feeling of cold wolves, staring others down, ready to pounce if someone weak appeared. But after this soldier entered, all of them suddenly quieted down. The soldier looked at the bald man and Peng Fei lying on the ground, then at Jiang Liusher still holding the gun, and his eyes widened. What's going on here? If you want to fight, take it outside. Jiang Liusher frowned. This guy came in yelling at him without even asking what happened. It was Peng Fei's group that provoked and struck first. You're all just standing there watching? The soldier then turned to scold the military personnel in charge of the quarantine station. At that moment, Captain Song hurriedly entered. Commander Zhang, back so early today? Seeing Captain Song, Commander Zhang's expression softened a little. Ran into those rebels again outside. Bit of a hassle, Commander Zhang said. Rebels? That must refer to the splintered military forces. Resources are scarce now, and the zombies and mutant beasts are getting more troublesome. They can't find supplies, so now they're trying to attack us, said Commander Zhang. Seeing that Commander Zhang no longer paid them any mind, the boy sneered coldly at Jiang Liusher, made a throat-slitting gesture, and said softly, see you another day. Jiang Liusher remained expressionless and didn't take the boy's threat seriously. Even if he hadn't been threatened, he wouldn't let him off. At that moment, Commander Zhang suddenly looked back at Jiang Liusher's group and asked, did you encounter He Biqing's people? Jiang Liusher paused, then realized he meant Commander He, the one who tried to stop them earlier and kidnap the scientists. You, come here and explain the situation, Commander Zhang said to Zhu Changqing. Clearly, he didn't care much for Jiang Liusher's group as survivors, but Zhu Changqing was a soldier. But Zhu Changqing frowned after hearing this. He wasn't just some grunt under Commander Zhang's command, so he didn't appreciate the commanding tone. Whether he would speak or not depended on Jiang Liusher. So instead of answering, Zhu Changqing turned and looked at Jiang Liusher. Zhu Changqing's reaction made Commander Zhang Hongyue pause for a moment. This escort captain from Zhonghai Safety Zone actually listened to a survivor? Zhang Hongyue's expression immediately turned displeased. But Jiang Liusher simply glanced at him and didn't answer his question directly. Instead, he asked, and who are you? I'm the commander of the armored regiment, Zhang Hongyue. Commander of the armored regiment? Never heard of him. Actually, not to mention a regiment commander, even if it were a general from Xingqing Bay City, Jiang Liusher wouldn't know them either. But a regiment commander casually questioning him? I was entrusted by General Zhang of the Zhonghai Safety Zone Military Committee to escort the scientists. Are you the one in charge of this mission here in Xingqing? Jiang Liusher asked. Zhang Hongyue's gaze darkened. He had heard about this matter. But of course, he wasn't the one handling it. He had only heard about it from Captain Song, so he asked casually. Still, even if he wasn't in charge, asking a few questions shouldn't be a problem. Captain Song looked at Jiang Liusher speechlessly. He didn't know what Jiang Liusher's status was in Zhonghai, but this was Xingqing Bay City. Jiang Liusher had ignored Xiaosun earlier, and it was fine since she didn't take offense. But this Commander Zhang was a powder keg, one spark would set him off. Even tough survivors, like that teenage boy earlier, wouldn't dare provoke Zhang Hongyue easily. I don't care about escorting scientists. But any intel about those rebels must be reported to me. Cracking down on rebels is my responsibility. Zhang Hongyue said. In front of so many people, he couldn't tolerate being rejected by a survivor. The rebels were right under your nose and almost kidnapped the scientists who came all the way from Zhonghai. If it wasn't for us, the scientists would have been gone already. Sun Quan snapped. That's your job, isn't it? So where were you? Zhang Hai added sarcastically. This guy acted like everything was just naturally his call. Clearly used to bossing people around. But Zhang Hai and Sun Quan only listened to Jiang Lushur, they didn't care about any so-called commander. Jiang Lushur also looked calmly at Zhang Hongyue. After everything that happened, this guy still had the nerve to talk about responsibility? Zhang Hongyue was momentarily speechless, his face turning black. These survivors spoke bluntly. What they said was basically slapping him in the face in public. You didn't arrive on time, and before entering Xingqing Bay City, the escort was your responsibility. Captain Song tried to say something, but Zhang Hongyue glared at him, cutting him off. Zhang Hongyue gave Jiang Lushur a deep look and said coldly, security in the Bay City is my responsibility too. Next time you cause trouble, don't let me catch you. During the physical inspection, the female soldiers checking Jiang Lushur seemed a bit fearful. They had all witnessed him take down Peng Fei and the bald man. This seemingly harmless young man was clearly deadly. Jiang Lushur noticed that the female soldier checking for wounds on his body was trembling slightly when her hand touched his skin. He found it a bit amusing. Didn't expect you to become a big bad guy, huh, bro? Jiang Zhuyin teased. Ran Shiyu couldn't help but laugh a little too. Xingqing Bay City is so complicated. It doesn't even feel like a base city, Li Yusen said worriedly. When we agreed to transfer the scientists earlier, Xingqing never told us that their military had splintered, Zhu Chongqing said, displeased. It's fine. Just be cautious, Jiang Lushur replied. No matter how chaotic Xingqing Bay City was, basic order was still necessary. Otherwise, things would fall apart. How would they resist other military factions? With the government gone, the military had more autonomy. It was natural for some to develop ambitions of carving out their own territories. Like Chu Zhongshan in Zhonghai Safety Zone, if he kept expanding, he might split off or turn Zhonghai into his personal domain. That's the only option, Zhu Chongqing nodded. Since he couldn't return to Zhonghai Safety Zone, he would have to settle in Xingqing Bay City. The residential space assigned to Jiang Liushur's group was quite satisfactory, a standalone building in the survivor team zone. Driving inside the city wasn't forbidden, which Jiang Lushur appreciated. It gave him an extra layer of security when going out. As soon as they arrived, Ying went in to inspect the place. The girls started tidying the rooms and unpacking. After so many days on the road, they needed a good rest. Jiang Lushur had assumed that, judging by Xingqing's attitude, it would take several days before anyone came to see him, or he might even have to go find them himself. But to his surprise, someone came early the next morning. While they were eating breakfast, Ran Shiyu looked up and said, "Someone's here, 7 people in total. A few of them have energy fluctuations." By then, Jiang Lushur was already back in the base vehicle, which was parked right outside the building, seamless access. 2 military vehicles arrived, one in front and one behind, and stopped outside the house. Seeing 2 Type 95 armored vehicles, Jiang Lushur slightly raised an eyebrow. Was that armored regiment guy here for payback so soon? But even armored vehicles didn't scare Jiang Lushur. At this close range, whether it was the air cannon or the sniper rifle, he could easily blow them up. He'd fought these light vehicles before. When the vehicle door opened, out jumped a woman in military uniform. This woman had a strong presence, with a wild, striking beauty. It was Xia Sun from yesterday. Xia Sun got out of the vehicle, looking somewhat annoyed. She had originally thought Jiang Lushur and his group weren't worth dealing with, survivors with a nouveau riche attitude after the apocalypse. Arguing with them was beneath her. But after returning to headquarters and questioning the scientists, her grandfather, General Xia Yongfeng, was furious upon hearing they were almost kidnapped. When he learned it was these survivors who had interrogated the captives, he immediately ordered Xia Sun to lead a team and cooperate with them. Cooperate with survivors? Xia Sun had no good impression of their free and undisciplined kind. As for the scientists saying these survivors were powerful fighters, she remained skeptical. There were plenty of strong fighters among survivors, but Xia Sun was confident that her team of ability users and regular troops were powerful enough. She didn't need survivor support. We really have to cooperate with these survivors? Zhang Hongyue had also arrived. Just yesterday, he had clashed with this survivor team, and now he was being asked to negotiate cooperation with them. The more he thought about it, the more stifled he felt. But he had no choice but to follow General Xia Yongfeng's orders. Zhang Hongyue had been just an ordinary soldier before the apocalypse. Afterward, Xia Yongfeng personally promoted him. He was one of Xia's direct subordinates. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had such influence in the base city. The problem was, this newly arrived team didn't know how powerful he was and refused to give him any face. Now Xia Yongfeng had even named him and Xia Sun to go speak with the team and gather information. In Zhang Hongyue's opinion, what was there to negotiate with these troublemakers? Just drag them to headquarters, intimidate them a bit, and they'd spill everything. Xia Sun frowned slightly and said, "These survivors really are undisciplined, completely ignorant of order, and don't follow commands. Putting them in a unit would be a big headache. Better to just ask them for the information. We don't necessarily have to team up. If we explain the risks and they back out voluntarily, that's ideal," she added. If she rejected them outright, Xia Yongfeng might get angry that his granddaughter disobeyed him. "That's easy," Zhang Hongyue sneered. Making these survivors refuse to participate was simple. Just mention fighting regular troops, and they'd lose their nerve. There were plenty of arrogant survivor teams in the base city, but Zhang Hongyue didn't take any of them seriously. No matter how tough they were, in front of tanks and cannons, they'd all back down. Zombies swarmed like a tidal wave, terrifying even before reaching you, but in front of modern weapons, they still hadn't wiped out Xingqiang. Everything was still standing, wasn't it? As Zhang Hongyue and Xia Sun talked quietly while walking, the window of the nearby minibus suddenly rolled down, and Jiang Liusher's face appeared behind the glass. The two of them immediately froze. From outside, they couldn't see into the vehicle. They hadn't expected the survivors to be sitting in the car so early instead of inside the house. Worse yet, with all their alertness, they hadn't even noticed anyone was in the car. Zhang Hongyue's expression darkened. "What are you hiding in there for?" Obviously, the people inside had overheard their conversation. "Who's hiding? If you weren't bad-mouthing others behind their backs, why would you be afraid of people listening? You call that discipline, gossiping behind others' backs?" Jiang Zhuiying snapped sarcastically, unable to hold back. Xia Sun's face stiffened. She was a bit embarrassed. She had always thought of herself as above talking behind people's backs. But what Jiang Zhuiying said was true. Caught red-handed, Xia Sun didn't know what to say for a moment. Just thinking that 5 or 6 people had been listening nearby while they talked, this was the most awkward moment of her life. Zhang Hongyue's face turned grim, and Xia Sun looked at Jiang Liusher, a trace of embarrassment on her cold, elegant face. "We came here to—" "No comment," Jiang Liusher interrupted. Xia Sun was instantly speechless, her face turning red. She had already lowered herself, but Jiang Liusher gave her no face at all. In the base city, as Xia Yongfeng's granddaughter, she was practically royalty. Many men chased her and flattered her constantly. But from the start, Jiang Liusher had shown her no respect. He didn't know who she was, but how could she reveal her identity herself? That would be too undignified. Xia Sun really couldn't say it. After holding it in, she finally said, "I can offer you a reward." "A reward?" Jiang Liusher laughed coldly. Ordinary rewards no longer interested him. "You keep saying we're not the regular army, which means you understand the combat power and weapons of the regular army. We defeated those troops without any help from you, and now you want information for free." Jiang Liusher said. "Didn't I just say we'd pay you? What, are you trying to take advantage and demand too much?" Zhang Hongyue said coldly. "Weapons, ammo, mutant beast meat, what do you want?" Zhang Hongyue asked. "Not interested." Jiang Liusher replied flatly, "If you want my cooperation, give me a level 2 mutant crystal core." Zhang Hongyue's eyes immediately widened. A level 2 mutant crystal core? Level 2 mutant beasts were already rare, and the chance of getting a core after killing one was even lower. Xingqiang was also researching evolution crystals and exchanging tech with Zhonghai. These cores were crucial to the base city. Other splintered military forces had their eyes on Xingqiang's defenses, weapons, food supplies, and these evolution crystals. As ability users kept evolving, mutant beast meat couldn't keep up with demand. Evolution crystals would soon become priceless. And now Jiang Liusher wanted one just like that? "You still owe us some reward." "I'll let that go, just count it all toward this level 2 core. Also, I want rights to the spoils of battle," Jiang Liusher added. Hearing this, Xia Sun's eyes widened in disbelief. He was just a survivor team leader, yet he not only asked for a level 2 core but also wanted rights to battle loot. Who did he think he was? God? You're just a survivor team. What makes you think you're so great? Asking for spoils like that, you're dreaming. Zhang Hongyue sneered. Xia Sun was furious too. "Oh? Then let it be a dream. If you don't want to cooperate, fine. Goodbye," Jiang Liusher said bluntly. With the region divided among warlords, Xingqiang had far less control than Zhonghai. Jiang Liusher didn't even fear Zhonghai's military, let alone Xingqiang's. Xia Sun was stunned. This guy was too arrogant. "If it's come to this, even Grandpa won't blame me." "Captain Zhang, let's go," Xia Sun said on purpose. Though she felt Jiang Lushur wasn't worth working with, she still wanted to fulfill her grandfather's order. So, she casually mentioned her identity in her words. Just saying, "Grandpa won't blame me," should be enough for anyone with half a brain to guess. Jiang Lushur, having crushed a military force, should be smart enough to figure it out. As the granddaughter of a high-ranking officer, she had come personally to invite him. If not flattered, he should at least take the hint. She hoped Jiang Lushur would loosen up a bit. If he did, she could compromise too. A better attitude from both sides might lead to cooperation. But to her shock, as she looked at Jiang Lushur with a bit of hope, the car window slowly rose, covering his face completely. Clack! The window shut tight. From the outside, you couldn't see in, but from inside, he could still see out. Staring at the window, all Xia Sun could see was her own reflection, and the reflection of her own twisted, angry mouth. At this point, what could she even say? Never seen someone so clueless. Xia Sun said furiously. "I told you, these survivors are all worthless. What else can they do besides cause trouble? Why would the old commander rely on them? These people get a little power and think they're saviors. Miss, let's go. Ignore them. This city is full of arrogant survivors. With that attitude, it won't be long before he picks a fight with them. When that happens, let the others deal with him. He may be strong, but he can't beat a mob. Sooner or later, he'll be taught a lesson," Zhang Hongyue said, gloating, as he turned and walked away. "They're gone. Did we really just reject them like that?" Li Yusin asked as she looked out the back window from inside the base vehicle. "Let them go. Working with them might not bring any benefits anyway. And when it matters most, they might sell us out." Jiang Lushur was half lying comfortably on the couch. He had no trust in Xingqing's military, especially after interacting with the man and woman who had just come. He felt even more distant from the military here. Of course, he wasn't completely against cooperation. If the benefits were good enough, he'd be willing to work with them. As he spoke, Jiang Lushur suddenly sat up straight on the couch. Brother Jiang, what's wrong?" Everyone in the vehicle paused when they saw Jiang Lushur's sudden movement. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked straight to Ying. Just now, the starseed had sent him a special alert. The starseed had detected a special energy source fluctuation. Previously, after killing mutant beasts, the starseed would detect the energy waves of the mutant crystal cores inside them and provide a rating. The first time Jiang Lushur found a crystal core was thanks to the starseed. But this alert was different, completely unusual. Most incredible was the detection distance. The energy source was northeast of Xingqing, over 100 kilometers away. That far, and the starseed still picked it up? That meant the energy fluctuation was extremely unique. "Brother Jiang, what message did the starseed give you?" As the AI manager of the base vehicle, Ying also received the alert. But the key details were sent directly to Jiang Lushur since he was the vehicle's owner. It's a special energy source. With it, the base vehicle could undergo 3 more evolutions. Jiang Lushur's eyes sparkled with excitement. 3 evolutions. The second evolution had added a 160-ton mining truck, greatly enhancing the base vehicle's combat power. If it evolved a third time, what could be added? Jiang Lushur was full of anticipation. A special energy source 200 kilometers away and a third evolution. "So, are we heading there now?" Ying asked. "Not yet. First, let's investigate the area. Let's see what's about 200 kilometers northeast of Xingqing. If it's too dangerous, we'll need to make a solid plan." The apocalypse was terrifying. Ever since he saw that massive tentacle monster in the Yangtze River sinking a cargo ship, Jiang Lushur had become deeply aware of the world's dangers. He was strong, but not invincible. Getting intel wasn't hard. Xingqing had weak military control, and black markets thrived. Most businesses weren't regulated by the army. This lack of control, and the frequent trouble from survivors, was why soldiers like Zhang Hongyue hated survivors so much. Soon, Jiang Lushur drove the base vehicle into a chaotic marketplace and found a trader specializing in information. For just 1 pound of food, he got detailed intel on the area he wanted, including a basic map. After reading it, Jiang Lushur was surprised. The place the starseed had detected wasn't a wild area full of mutant beasts, as he had imagined. It was a city called Fallen City, Dualuoqing. In Xingqing, the power struggle was intense. Survivors had grown so strong that even dark factions had built a city rivaling Xingqing itself. The name Fallen City was chosen by those dark forces. The name alone showed what kind of place it was. In Xingqing, even if the government's control was weak, there were still basic laws. The army might not care about survivors killing each other, but if civilians were slaughtered en masse, they would step in. But in Fallen City, even that weak legal restraint didn't exist. It was a lawless city. If there was any rule, it was that strength ruled all. The strong could control life and death at will. Human trafficking, torture, it was a paradise of sin. No wonder the military is so desperate to eliminate these splintered factions, Li Yusin said in shock. If dark forces are building entire cities, the army could be replaced by them over time. Otherwise, the military wouldn't be asking for cooperation with Jiang Liusher's team. It really is scary. Honestly, I don't think Xingqing's army can handle the situation anymore. Even if they go to war, I doubt they can wipe out these warlords, Jiang Liusher said as he looked over the newly acquired map. After the apocalypse, morals collapsed, and humanity's dark side ran wild. Jiang Liusher had seen evil before, but never on this scale, never gathered like this in one place. It was insane. This fallen city isn't simple. According to the intel, the most influential people there aren't even warlords, it's a powerful survivor pair, a man called Dark Star and a woman called Blood Cloud. These two are extremely mysterious. They helped build Fallen City and are so feared that even the military doesn't want to mention them. After the city was built, many survivors from Xingqing moved there. It truly became a haven for evil, where people can freely act on their darkest urges, even more openly than in Xingqing. Are we really going to Fallen City? Yes. I'm very curious why the Starseed detected such a strange energy source there. Could there be some kind of powerful mutant beast hiding in the city? Fallen City was a legitimate, open place. In fact, the road between Xingqing and Fallen City had already been cleared. Well-equipped survivor teams could make the 100+ km trip. Some teams even traveled back and forth between the two cities. At that moment, in a villa within Xingqing's military zone, Xia Sun was fuming like an angry kitten, ranting about how unreasonable Jiang Liusher was and how he asked for too much. Xia Yongfeng listened silently, and seeing his granddaughter so upset, he actually smiled. "Grandpa, what are you smiling about?" He asked for a level 2 mutant crystal core and rights to the battle loot. "Isn't that outrageous?" Xia Sun said angrily. Xia Yongfeng replied, "Survivors who've been on top for a while tend to get arrogant. But it's true, they do have skills. Still, you're right. That Jiang kid is too arrogant. What he wants is just ridiculous." Xia Yongfeng had proposed cooperating with Shiring team partly because the old guy named Zhang from Zhonghai had sent them. He figured they must be capable. Also, He Tianhu's men were very slippery, and the army hadn't been able to search everywhere. Shiring team was the only group who'd recently encountered He Tianhu's people and obtained intel. "Don't worry, sooner. Shiring team already offended He Tianhu. And I know what kind of person he is, he won't let that go. He has many informants in Xingqing. The moment Shiring team steps out, he'll know, and he'll try to kill Jiang Liusher himself." Survivor teams consume a lot of mutant beast meat. They have to hunt to survive. But with He Tianhu around, Shiring team won't get far. Soon, they won't even be able to leave the city, and when that happens, they'll come to us for cooperation. Just let them stew for a while. They'll learn their place. Xia Yongfeng's words seemed to ease Xia Sun's mood. She clenched her fists and said, "When that annoying Jiang guy comes crawling back to us, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind." She imagined the scene, and just the thought made her feel better. But just as she said that, a messenger knocked on the door. "Commander. You ordered us to track Shiring team. We've confirmed, they've left Xingqing and are heading northeast. Looks like they're going to Fallen City." The messenger's words stunned Xia Yongfeng. "What? Fallen City? Why are they going to Fallen City?" Xia Yongfeng frowned. Xia Sun snorted coldly and said, "Just as I thought, survivors are all the same. Once they gain a little strength, they think they can do whatever they want. Those scientists were tricked by them into speaking well of them, praising them. Maybe they even have Stockholm Syndrome." At the thought of all the rumors about Fallen City, Xia Sun's face showed disdain and disgust. "They probably heard some rumors and really believe Fallen City is a paradise," Xia Yongfeng said with some disappointment. Most survivors who went to Fallen City were driven by their own dark desires. But if it were really that easy to survive there, the city wouldn't have such a bloody and dark reputation. On the road from Xingqing to Fallen City, Jiang Liusher's minibus was speeding down the highway, followed by a repainted off-road vehicle. From time to time, zombie groups appeared on the road, but before they could charge, both vehicles had already sped past. Occasionally, a zombie leaped onto the car, but it was just a dull bang sound. Even near the Zhonghai safety zone, Jiang Liusher and the others hadn't encountered roads this clear. There were hardly any abandoned vehicles, and few obstacles. An entire stretch of over 100 kilometers had been cleared. This obviously wasn't done by Xingqing's military. On such a clear road, the 100+ kilometer journey wouldn't take long. "Brother Jiang, why are we going to Fallen City?" Ran Shiyu asked curiously. Jiang Liusher wasn't quite sure how to answer. He couldn't exactly say it was because of the starseed. Well, just as he was about to respond, Ran Shiyu added, I'm just curious. It's your call. I wonder if we can find any medicine in Fallen City, Li Yusin said. Much of her medical supplies had been used up during the scientist escort mission. They hadn't stayed long in Xingqing, and Li Yusin had found out that most medical resources were controlled by the military, and with their current relationship with the military, better not count on it. In Fallen City, where there were no laws and the rules were chaotic, it might actually be easier to find medicine than in Xingqing. Jiang Lushur nodded. Besides medicine, they had some weapons and ammunition that they could potentially sell there for a better price than in Xingqing. As for Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan in the off-road vehicle behind, they also had shopping to do. After all the bumps and scrapes of getting to Xingqing, only Jiang Liushur's minibus had improved, it even gained new features, while the other vehicles were battered from constant collisions and rough roads. After driving for a while, in the distance, a tall wall appeared. Behind the black wall stood clusters of buildings. Fallen City had once been a small, unknown town. Now, it was surrounded on all sides by walls. Inside the walls was Fallen City. As they got closer, they saw that the walls weren't painted black, they were stained black from layers of dried blood. 2 corpses were hanging from chains on the wall. Their lower halves were gone, only upper bodies swinging in the wind. Seeing the zombies jumping up below, trying to reach those bodies, gave everyone chills. Those jumps reached just high enough to grab the corpses' lower halves. The fate of those missing limbs was self-evident. This must be Fallen City's way of punishment. Even the usually tough Jiang Zhuiying frowned. It was brutal, those victims probably didn't die right away. There were machine guns and cannons mounted on the gates, pointed downwards. As Jiang Liushur's vehicles approached, the heavy gates began to creak open. Huh? They're opening just like that? Places like Xingqing Bay City would always question and inspect you before opening the gate, but here, it opened directly. As the gate opened and the vehicles approached, the noise drew the attention of the zombies still clawing at the corpses. These blood-covered, red-eyed zombies instantly turned toward them and let out beast-like growls before charging. V-room. Both vehicles accelerated hard, one after another, and sped through the gate. Bang! The gate slammed shut just before the zombies reached it. No inspection? Aren't they afraid of infected people getting in? Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan pulled up beside the minibus, clicking their tongues. Those bitten or scratched by zombies but not yet transformed were called infected. Once discovered, they were killed immediately due to the risk of turning and triggering a chain reaction. But Fallen City didn't seem to care. No idea. Maybe they have their own way of handling it, Jiang Lushur replied. As soon as they passed the gate, the starseed alerted him, the special energy source had been detected. Looking down the street behind the gate and at the buildings that looked pretty ordinary, Jiang Lushur suddenly felt tense. The starseed had confirmed, the unique energy source was inside Fallen City. First time here? Need a map guide? A guard walked over and asked. Jiang Lushur saw that the guard carried a machine gun and had a stone-like, muscular build, clearly an ability user. His aura was cold, he had probably killed many people. How'd you know this is our first time? Zhang Hai asked. The guard grinned, a twisted smile that looked worse than no smile at all. People who come here usually go straight to the amusement park. No one stops here. Parking here means you're either looking for trouble or a rookie. Which are you? What's the amusement park? Jiang Lushur asked. The guard just glanced at him and said nothing. Give me a map guide, Jiang Lushur said calmly. 5 pounds of mutant beast meat, the guard replied. Before, a regional map had only cost 1 pound. Now this small town map cost 5? Seeing Jiang Lushur frown, the guard said lazily, spend a few days in Fallen City and you'll know, 5 pounds of meat is nothing. Totally worth it. Jiang Lushur called. Soon, brought out a chunk of mutant beast meat. The guard's eyes lit up when he saw her. But he said nothing, took the meat, and handed over a small booklet. Jiang Lushur had expected just a single sheet, but it was actually a decently thick booklet with maps and pictures. Amusement park. Jiang Lushur quickly flipped to the amusement park section. The 3 words amusement park at first glance might make one think of a pre-apocalypse theme park. However, the amusement park described in this booklet had nothing to do with that. It was a place where the ugliest sides of human nature were completely unleashed. Here, as long as you had mutant beast meat, mutant crystal cores, or enough power, you could satisfy any desire. There were no rules, no restrictions. Before the apocalypse, Jiang Lushur had heard about dark things like this, but those were distant from ordinary people. In this amusement park, however, such things were all out in the open. To enter, one had to pay 50 gene of mutant beast meat as an entrance fee. Even most survivor teams would hesitate at such a number, let alone ordinary people. Just from the daily ticket income alone, it was already a huge profit. Jiang Lushur felt that Fallen City might actually be richer than a base city. He didn't know where exactly in Fallen City the special energy originated, but since the amusement park was the most prosperous area, he decided to start looking there. Once you've paid the ticket, you can go anywhere inside, though some places charge extra. Of course, judging by you, I don't think you'll need that kind of service, said the guard collecting tickets, glancing meaningfully at the girls behind Jiang Lushur. Jiang Lushur didn't bother talking to him. He led Jiang Zhuiying and the others into Fallen City. As soon as they entered, the sight before them made Jiang Lushur truly understand what sin and depravity meant. He saw dozens of people gathered around a wooden platform. On the platform were rows of sturdy wooden frames, and on each frame, a woman was bound, wrapped in only a few pathetic strips of cloth, her body fully exposed, left for others to humiliate and watch. From time to time, men from the crowd climbed onto the stage. By paying a bit of mutant beast meat, they could do whatever they wanted to these women. Whips, bamboo rods, iron tongs, all kinds of tools were available. The female slaves were already covered in bruises and wounds from repeated abuse. This is a place for ability users to relieve stress, the guard said with a grin. Always fighting out there, with their heads hanging on their belts, they carry a lot of pressure. As long as they pay mutant meat, they can do whatever they want to these women, beat them, kick them, bite them, rape them, urinate on them, torture them to death if they wish. Of course, prices vary depending on what you want. As the guard spoke, he noticed Jiang Lushur frowning deeply, while the women behind him looked visibly sickened. Some instinctively reached for their weapons. The guard coughed dryly and added, "Not everyone likes that kind of thing. Most ability users prefer clean, pretty slaves. You can even buy virgins at many female slave markets." He winked as he spoke. Jiang Lushur said nothing. The world had been in the apocalypse for a long time now. Without rules, how dark could human nature become? Just look at the terrorists in the Middle East before the apocalypse, torture, rape of children. And even before the end, in so-called peaceful nations, there were dark web markets where people could easily buy videos of rape, child abuse, and murder. Buying and selling drugs or guns was even more common. The dark web had always existed, but back then, it was at least suppressed by Interpol. Now that there was no Interpol, such horrors had only grown unchecked. As they continued toward the amusement park, Jiang Lushur saw even more gruesome scenes. He saw corpse-collecting slaves cleaning bodies from the streets. He saw a huge iron cage holding live zombies. The bars were dark brown with dried blood. It made one wonder if living people had been thrown in for the zombies to eat. He saw a burly man holding a leash. But the leash was not tied to a pet, it was tied to a living, naked woman. Her skin was pale, a collar was locked around her neck, and she crawled on all fours like a dog. The sight was deeply unsettling. Perhaps Fallen City hadn't started with so many perverts and monsters, but humans were social creatures, easily shaped by their environment. Even a good person, dropped into a place like this, would slowly have their dark side magnified. Watching all these horrors, realizing they could indulge freely, they would eventually think, just once. I'll try it once. My conscience can handle that. But once leads to twice, then to a third time. In the end, they become addicted, take pleasure in it, and grow cruel, twisted, and perverse. It was like with drugs in peaceful times. Everyone knew they were deadly, yet some people still tried them and destroyed their lives. Among those people were often elites, celebrities, and other, successful figures. All of this was what had led to Fallen City's creation. "This city is disgusting," Jiang Zhuiying said angrily. "I once read a memoir by a World War II soldier," Li Yusen said softly. "He said killing becomes addictive during war." She sighed. Kind-hearted by nature, she couldn't bear to see such things. At that moment, Jiang Lushur suddenly stopped. His gaze turned to the side of the road, where a structure surrounded by green stone walls stood. The walls were massive, over 10 meters high, completely blocking his view, but as soon as he saw it, he couldn't look away. He felt certain that the energy source detected by the starseed was inside those walls. "Oh?" Interested in the arena, the guard noticed Jiang Lushur's gaze. "Arena? Yeah, it's the main attraction of the amusement park. The ticket sales alone bring in unimaginable profit every day. Ever heard of the Roman Colosseum? This arena is about the same." The guard proudly flaunted his meager historical knowledge. In ancient Rome, it was gladiators fighting each other and beasts. Same here, only bloodier and more intense. Some people here fight beasts, but most of those beasts are mutant beasts. And there are fights with zombies too, live ones, caught outside, kept caged and starved for 10 days before being released. The arena offers thrills you can't even imagine. Of course, if you win, you get great rewards. So, what do you say? Interested in watching? You can take a look if you want. Jiang Lushur was very curious about what kind of strange energy was hidden inside the arena. He led Jiang Zhuiying, Li Yusin, Ran Xiyu, and Ying toward the arena. Such a group immediately attracted many stares. Though there were many female slaves in Fallen City, truly beautiful women were rare. With 4 young and pretty girls in his group, they naturally caught people's attention. Just as they approached the arena, Ran Xiyu suddenly stopped. "Brother Jiang, someone is watching us in secret." Her voice echoed directly in Jiang Lushur's mind. "Oh?" Jiang Lushur paused. Many people were looking at them, but if Ran Xiyu pointed it out specifically, then it was something more serious. "They're following us. I don't know who they are yet." "Got it." Jiang Lushur wasn't surprised. Ever since arriving at the Star City base, he had already clashed with local warlords. It was only natural for someone to watch him from the shadows. Keep an eye on them. If they try anything, we strike first. Fallen City wasn't large. Their base vehicle was still parked outside the city gate. With just a thought, the vehicle could drive in autonomously in no time. Jiang Lushur wasn't too worried. Outside the arena, a crowd of different kinds of people had gathered, mostly male and female slaves. Survivors who could survive in Fallen City were usually doing fairly well. They often fed their female slaves enough food to keep them in good condition. Male slaves, however, were usually in miserable shape, skin and bones, like drug addicts, looking like they'd collapse at a breeze. When entering Fallen City earlier, Jiang Lushur had seen 2 expressionless male slaves dragging a mutilated corpse out of the arena. The arena grounds were dark red from all the blood spilled over time. Even walking on it, there was a faint bloody smell. The guard stopped at the entrance. He wasn't going inside. Jiang Lushur gave him some food as a tip. "Thanks, boss." The guard was pleased. "If you need help inside the arena, aside from reading the guidebook, you can also ask some locals. They do everything." Fallen City's arena was elliptical. In the center was a granite platform, surrounded by iron fences, making it look like a massive cage. At that moment, 2 gates of the cage opened, and the gladiators for this fight came out. Jiang Lushur immediately saw that the fighter was an ability user, but their energy was weak. Jiang Lushur didn't think much of it. Across from him were zombies. 10 zombies were released. Their eyes were blood red, clothes tattered, bodies reeking of blood and rot. As soon as they appeared, they lunged at the gladiator. Jiang Lushur only glanced a few times before losing interest. The ability user was too weak to be worth watching. At that moment, he noticed a group of people walking toward him. Leading them was a man with an impressive presence, followed by a greasy-looking fat man with a middle-part hairstyle. Despite the apocalypse, he looked like he was living quite comfortably. Jiang Lushur showed a look of surprise when he saw the fat man. This fat man was an ordinary person, no energy fluctuations. In a place like Fallen City, where the weak were eaten alive, ordinary people could barely survive, let alone live well. That wasn't what surprised Jiang Lushur, though. He knew this man. His name was Ma Hao. Back when Jiang Lushur studied at Jiangbei University, this fat guy was a loan shark. Before the apocalypse, Jiang Lushur had urgently needed a car to host the starseed and make modifications. Since he didn't have much money, he couldn't afford to buy one. Even renting a car and buying metal materials was too expensive. So he borrowed money from Ma Hao. Ma Hao looked kind and generous, but he was far from it. Especially with female students, he often demanded nude photos as collateral, which he kept and shared with his shady friends. As for girls who couldn't repay their debts and had to pay in other ways, Jiang Lushur wasn't sure, but it likely happened often. After the apocalypse began, Jiang Lushur no longer cared about debts. He never thought he'd run into Ma Hao again here, and by the look of it, Ma Hao was doing quite well. Had this guy resumed his old trade in Fallen City? As Jiang Lushur thought about this, Ma Hao also spotted him. At first, Ma Hao just gave him a casual glance, more interested in the beautiful women at Jiang Lushur's side. But after a moment, his eyes snapped back in recognition. "It's you?" Ma Hao had always been a sharp guy at Jiangbei University, well-connected, with a good memory for faces. "You're Jiang Lushur, right? Who's this fat creep?" Jiang Zhuiying asked with disgust. Ma Hao's lecherous stare earlier had made her uncomfortable. "He's an old loan shark I used to know." Jiang Lushur directly exposed Ma Hao's identity. The term loan shark wasn't exactly flattering, and Jiang Zhuiying's impression of him got even worse. "So it is you. I can't believe we ran into each other here." Ma Hao scanned the women beside Jiang Lushur. "You've done well for yourself, huh? Living the good life with a bunch of chicks. Speaking of which, the money you borrowed from me, you still haven't paid me back." Collecting debts was Ma Hao's favorite thing. His brain was like a living ledger. He never forgot a cent anyone owed him. He never imagined he'd meet someone who still owed him money after the world collapsed. He thought they'd all be dead by now. 20,000 yuan, with compound interest, that's up to 80,000 now, Ma Hao said, rubbing his hands together with a grin. He looked at Jiang Lushur like he was eyeing a fat piece of meat. Seeing how Jiang Lushur had done for himself, Ma Hao's eyes lit up. Pay you back? Jiang Lushur chuckled. You want me to give you 80 grand? Sure, I'll go to the bank tomorrow and get it for you. After the apocalypse, banks were destroyed. Most of the cash was still in their vaults, now just worthless paper. No one bothered with it anymore. Come on, Jiang Lushur. Now you're just being unreasonable. Mao is my faded. Sure, I lent you paper money. But that was before the apocalypse. Now you want to pay me back with trash? In Fallen City, I'm Lord Ma. Not just anyone can walk over me. Ma Hao had mixed in with the underworld for a while. His nickname was Lord Ma, and he often said, "Let me show you how many eyes Lord Ma has." Ma Hao, what's going on? While Ma Hao was talking to Jiang Lushur, a middle-aged man with an imposing presence walked over. He wore a black leather coat, military pants and boots, and had a curved military saber at his waist. He exuded a sharp and intimidating aura. Commander Yuan, nothing, just a small matter. I ran into someone I knew from before, he owes me money. Seeing this middle-aged man approach, Ma Hao immediately put on a fawning smile, full of flattery. Owes you money? Commander Yuan glanced at Jiang Lushur and then lost interest. As a powerful warlord on the outskirts of Star City, Commander Yuan stood high above. Controlling the lives of over 1,000 people, he didn't care about small figures like Jiang Lushur. After flattering and sending off Commander Yuan, Ma Hao turned back to Jiang Lushur and said in a sinister tone, "Kid, I, Lord Ma, have many eyes in Fallen City. Don't try to play tricks with me. By this time tomorrow, prepare 500 kilograms of mutant beast meat. That'll clear your debt." As he said this, he swept his lecherous eyes over the girls next to Jiang Lushur. In his mind, they were probably bought slaves. He figured Jiang Lushur had some wealth, but with such a large demand for mutant meat, he doubted Jiang could, or would, pay. Heh, Jiang Lushur, you've awakened some ability, haven't you? But the waters in Fallen City are deep. Your little powers might not be enough. Being obedient and handing over the meat is the smart thing to do. With that, Ma Hao eagerly followed Commander Yuan and sat beside him. Their seats weren't far from Jiang Lushur, so he could hear every word they said clearly. From Ma Hao's conversation, Jiang Lushur quickly understood what kind of person Ma Hao had become. He was one of those so-called local snakes the earlier guard had mentioned, people in Fallen City who worked for the powerful, running errands, gathering intel, buying and selling slaves, etc. In Fallen City, there were many brothels, casinos, and slave markets, and such places needed guys like Ma Hao to serve as pimps or hosts. These people typically had weak strength. Even if they were ability users, they were at the lowest level. Some, like Ma Hao, were just ordinary people. Snakes had their paths, and rats had their tunnels. Though ordinary people weren't as powerful as ability users, they could still survive and even thrive here, because most ability users didn't want to handle every little thing themselves. Ma Hao, with his slick manners and shameless flattery, managed to work his way under a warlord. He understood that warlords' tastes and found many female slaves to satisfy him, along with all kinds of perverse toys. With that, he earned the warlord's trust and began to grow more powerful step by step. Jiang Lushur felt nothing but disgust toward Ma Hao. Back in school, Ma Hao had already ruined many female students' lives. Now, he was just a dog for these warlords, doing every kind of dirty deed. Give him mutant meat? No way. Jiang Lushur didn't care about small fry like Ma Hao. But what Ma Hao said next made his brow furrow and a wave of anger rise in his chest. Ma Hao was some distance away, so if he lowered his voice, no one nearby would hear. But Jiang Lushur had enhanced blood circulation and brain function. His hearing was far better than a normal person's. Add to that Ran Shiyu's long-range perception, and nothing they said could be hidden. Commander Yuan, what do you think of those 4 girls just now? Mao grindeludli. He was clearly referring to the 4 women with Jiang Lushur. That brat owes me and is terrified of me. He's hiding to avoid my collections. I doubt he can repay me. When the time comes, I'll take those girls as payment and offer them to you. How's that? Oh? Commander Yuan's brow twitched slightly. He didn't show any obvious emotion, but Ma Hao knew he was tempted, just trying to keep a dignified appearance. In the apocalypse, female slaves were everywhere. But beautiful, clean, and mentally alert girls like these were rare. If he got them and distributed them among the warlords, Ma Hao was certain he'd earn countless benefits. You think he'll listen to you? Commander Yuan asked. Heh, of course he will. Don't worry, Commander. I can handle a guy like that, Ma Hao replied confidently. He assumed Jiang Lushur might have a minor ability, but so what? In Fallen City, there were plenty of terrifying powerhouses. Even among his contacts, several were ability users. This bastard is disgusting. Ran Shiyu was furious after hearing Ma Hao's words. She had once been imprisoned as a slave herself. If not for Jiang Lushur, she would have been long dead. That's why she felt especially enraged at someone like Ma Hao. Just then, Ran Shiyu noticed a group of uniformed soldiers approaching. Leading them was a man with a commanding gait, wearing a black coat. There was a bullet-sized hole on his cheek, a gunshot wound. As this man approached, Ma Hao stood up with his ingratiating smile again. "Commander He, you're here too? Looks like tonight's final battle at the Fallen Arena will be quite the spectacle. Commander He, did you place a bet?" The man with the facial scar was named He Tianhu. He was another powerful warlord around Star City, one whose forces might even surpass Commander Yuan's. "Commander He?" Jiang Lushur raised his eyebrows. When he first arrived in Star City, he had been ambushed by a warlord's troops. After capturing one, Jiang forced him to reveal his superior's name, Commander He. He wasn't a common surname, and there weren't many warlords around Star City. That meant there was a very high chance that this Commander He was the same one who ordered the attack. "Brother Jiang, two people are heading toward Commander He. They're the same ones who were watching us earlier," Ran Shiyu said. When Jiang Lushur's group had first entered the arena, they'd noticed someone tailing them. If Commander He had spies in Star City, it was no surprise that they knew Jiang's appearance, location, and movements. Now that Jiang had entered Fallen City, it was only natural that Commander He's men would continue monitoring him. And now they were approaching to report. They didn't know about Ran Shiyu's abilities, so they had no idea their surveillance had already been exposed. This Star City military is probably rotten to the core already, Jiang Lushur thought bitterly. This event further confirmed his disappointment with Star City's military. The rise of warlords was already a result of military incompetence, and now even the military's own inner structure had been infiltrated. Tempted by food, mutant meat, women, and with all rules and laws broken, it was only natural that some in the military would turn traitor. That's likely one of the reasons warlords still lived so freely. Any military action was leaked immediately. Even the scientists Jiang had delivered were probably no secret. So what authority did Star City have left?
Did you enjoy the story, guys? I hope you did. Support this video with a like and a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.